Chapter 781. The Ascension ceremony begins after everyone saw Yi Shiwen recruiting. They immediately knew that it would be hopeless. Yi Shiwen was definitely going to be the next in line Tibetan star son. They didn't know what Yi Shiwen was thinking. They only felt that if nothing happened to him, he would become the next in line Tibetan star son. This much was certain. His invitation was equal to the next in line Tibetan star son's invitation. Even if top 10 legates were here, unless their current chef personally came to recruit the new disciples, they would be unable to surpass Yi Ziwen's weight of invitation. However, that would be impossible. What kind of identity does the top 10 legates have? They were the powerhouses within the true martial school. Although distinguished characters would appear in every recruitment event, they wouldn't personally come out to recruit the new disciples. As expected, after Yi Shiwen proposed his invitation, Ingbubi was already displaying a heavy interest in joining the Tibetan Star Summit. Although the Tibetan Star Summit wasn't part of the top 10 lineage, they were once among them. With such foundations, and the fact that the next-in-line Supreme Schoolmaster was from the Tibetan Star Summit, it was extremely alluring. When the news of Yi Shiwen recruiting Ingbubi into the Tibetan Star Summit was spread around, the disciples of the top 10 lineages pounded their chest. Originally, they wanted to act a little more prideful. In the end, Yi Shiwen was the one that got Ingbubi instead. Although he had yet to enter the school, the fact that he had made his choice wouldn't change. In the past, they wouldn't be so anxious about recruiting. After all, the top 100 lineages weren't comparable to them at all. As a result, they wouldn't be anxious at all. Before those distinguished characters chose which lineage they would like to enter, they would have to consider it very thoroughly. Situations like these had occurred many times. In truth, it's always been like this in the past. As the top 10 lineage, they held their own advantage. However, everything was different now. With Yi Shiwen here, the situation had been changed completely. No matter if it was the charisma of the next-in-line schoolmaster, Huang Wuji or Yi Ziwen's, they shouldn't be underestimated. It became much more apparent after the 10 years of warfare that happened not too long ago. They didn't dare to be arrogant anymore with the interference of Yi Shiwen. They personally went ahead to recruit the new disciples. They fought for the recruitment of the disciples that they had viewed in high regard before. The prodigies, and especially the distinguished talents, were all being recruited by them. Time passed during the fight for recruitment. Very quickly, the open day for the true martial school was over. Compared to the past years, this year's competition was much more intense. After all, many lineages had suffered during the 10 years of warfare, especially the top 10 lineages. After all, they were the main forces of the war. Due to their exceptional losses, they had to quickly replenish their forces. Adding the fact that there was a meddler like Yi Shiwen, the competition became extremely intense. Every disciple among the top 10 lineages were secretly scolding Yi Shiwen for being so shameless. After all, he didn't care what kind of position he possessed, and still personally came out to recruit the distinguished characters. In the end, the top 10 lineages became extremely furious in snatching the new disciples, and quickly sent out their higher-ups to join the fray. In the end, 6 distinguished characters among 30 were snatched away by the Tibetan Star Summit. In the past, the distinguished characters wouldn't be classified as one so quickly. After all, there was only one qualification one needs to meet to be called a distinguished character, and that was whether they could cultivate till the half-step legendary Great Perfection realm. In the past, numerous distinguished characters would still be secretly cultivating. However, the standards of this batch of new disciples were much higher compared to before. Before they even entered the school, they had already reached the half-step legendary Great Perfection realm. In fact, there would be even more people that would enter the Great Perfection half-step legendary realm in the future, and ultimately become a distinguished character, just like Yi Shiwen in the past. The thing that surprised Yi Shiwen was that his elder brother and second eldest sister had both entered the half-step legendary Great Perfection realm, and their names had become well known within an ancient road. His sister-in-law and brother-in-law were also of the 9th level half-step legendary realm. With only a little more effort, they would then enter the half-step legendary Great Perfection realm. The 4 of them worked together, and almost killed everything hindering their path within the ancient road. Their performance was much stronger compared to Yi Shiwen in the past. The arrival of this group had even surprised the higher-ups of each lineage. However, seeing how they were all related to Yi Shiwen, they could only choose to give up. Many people's interests were also piqued. Is the Great Yu Empire such a good place? How did so many distinguished characters appear from there? In the last batch of disciples, there were Yi Shiwen, Qi Fifan, and Hua Menghan. Now, there were 2 more of them. 5 distinguished characters had emerged from just 2 batches of disciples. Its efficiency in producing distinguished characters was unimaginable. Even if someone said that a dragon vein was buried deep under the Great Yu Emperor, people would believe him. Otherwise, how could so many talented people emerge from there? However, compared to another grand matter, the recruitment of disciples was negligible. After all, the ascension as the true martial school's schoolmaster that everyone was waiting for was about to start. The true martial school had secluded itself from the world for 30 years' time. Within these 30 years, nobody knew how much changes had undergone. Now was a rare chance to have a clear look. No matter if it was the extraterrestrial overlords or the remaining forces within the true martial domain, they both sent their distinguished figure over to have a look. Naturally, they wouldn't want to miss out on such an opportunity. All of a sudden, the true martial school became very lively. The old figures and seniors that secluded themselves from the world from many years arrived one after another. The ascension as a schoolmaster was a huge matter. No matter what, they would have to attend the ceremony as a form of respect. Most importantly, almost all these huge figures of each force were transcendent realm experts, and had even brought a huge bunch of experts along with them. This alone would cause the true martial school to be at an unrest state. Normally, they wouldn't be allowed to get close to the true martial school. Even if they had some activities, they would conduct it in other small worlds. However, it was different this time. The ascension of the true martial school's new schoolmaster was a grand matter. Even the spectating arena was by the ancestral peak. The entire Tibetan Star Summit became exceptionally busy, especially when the new Supreme Schoolmaster was from their Tibetan Star Summit. They also shared the glory with Huang Wuji's ascension. Early in the morning, everyone in the Tibetan Star Summit had all gathered around. With Yi Feng, Yerushue, Ing Bubi, and the hundreds of new disciples that entered the Tibetan Star Summit, the desolated Tibetan Star Summit suddenly became very lively. In the eyes of other lineages, the amount of disciples they had still considered very little. However, for the Tibetan Star Summit that only had one person for a few generations, it was an unprecedented amount. Now, the Tibetan Star Summit was in a joyous mood. With the second senior sister, Lu Yenlan, in the lead, everyone stood up and lined up according to the sequence of whoever joined the Tibetan Star Summit first. They were awaiting the arrival of their master, the Tibetan Star Sun. Beside Yi Shiwen, Bai Jiansong elbowed Yi Shiwen and sent him a voice transmission secretly, "Little junior brother." Although many disciples had entered, Bai Jiansong was still calling Yi Shiwen his little junior brother, just like how he used to. As for Yi Shiwen, he didn't mind it either. Said Yi Shiwen. "I'm afraid that it won't be so peaceful today," said Bai Jiansong. "It's been a long time since these extraterrestrial overlords had been eyeing us. Previously, they were merely frightened by our attacks after defeating the emergent school." Yi Shiwen nodded. The current true martial school was merely a paper tiger. It bared its fangs and attempted to frighten the strong enemies surrounding it. Compared to those extraterrestrial overlords, the true martial school was too weak. Even with the true martial stone sword suppressing them, it would be useless. If they were to team up with each other, the annihilation of the true martial school would only be a matter of time. However, it was precisely because of this that the true martial school couldn't bear to show their weak side. They had to act tough and misguide their perception towards the true martial school. Previously, they didn't have the chance to do so because we secluded ourselves. However, now that the senior brother was going to ascend to the position of the schoolmaster, it might be the best chance to do so. They wouldn't give up on such a chance so easily. "When the time comes, I'm afraid that problems might arise one after another," said Bai Jiansong with a sigh. Although his improvements during the past few years had been quick, he felt powerless. many matters weren't able to be settled by him. If he entered the half-step transcendent realm, he might have some uses. If they dare to cause havoc, it'll show them that we aren't weak either. Yi Shiwen snorted coldly. No wonder those old monsters that had been in seclusion for years had come out. Not only do they want to show respect for the senior brother, they also wanted to show off their powers in order to shock the extraterrestrial overlord forces. During this period of time, he had placed all his attention into recruiting new disciples and never paid attention to such matters. He never expected things to escalate into such a serious state. Currently, the true martial domain was in a panicked state. As the true martial school who was like a representative figure for the true martial domain, it was hard for them to make any actions, as they had to worry about the repercussions of every action they made. Only by secluding themselves would they be able to avoid such conflicts. "I'm just afraid that they would cause havoc during the ascension ceremony," said Bai Jiansong. If that happened, clashing against each other might be unavoidable. Yi Shiwen remained silent for a while. Just as he wanted to speak, he felt a surge of energy painted in the color of blood fanatically surging upwards from his body. It almost seemed like it was about to pierce through the sky. Seeing this, he felt very happy. He immediately used his martial arts to suppress this blood-colored energy. He was bursting with happiness. He never expected the Tianyuan mirror to complete its changes in such a crucial moment and successfully transformed into a transcendent tool. With a transcendent tool as a form of protection, he would dare to fight against even a transcendent realm expert. After all, not every transcendent realm expert possessed a transcendent tool. If he were to fight against a transcendent realm expert without a transcendent tool, he stood a chance with the protection of the Tianyuan mirror. With this tool, he had the confidence to do so. After putting in quite an amount of effort, he finally suppressed the energy that leaked from the transformation of the Tianyuan mirror. Just as he wanted to speak, a silhouette appeared from the skies. It was the Tibetan star sun. The Tibetan star sun stood in the air and swept his gaze around everyone present. He said in a clear voice, "Let's go to the ascension ceremony." 1. Someone that claims or appears to be powerful or threatening, but is actually ineffectual and unable to withstand challenge. Chapter 782, Is this the way you treat your guests? In the true martial school, the ascension ceremony of the new Supreme Schoolmaster was a grand occasion that would only happen once every few thousand years. Naturally, the event's decorations would be very grand as well. Lights were hung up everywhere, and almost covered the entire ancestral peak where the schoolmaster's manor was located at. No matter what identity the schoolmaster previously had, they would automatically quit their original legatee after becoming the schoolmaster. The ancestral peak had its own underlings that possessed absolute loyalty to the schoolmaster and were all his to be ordered around. Of course, the schoolmaster's original legatee would become a solid backup for the schoolmaster, just like how it worked with the bridal family. Of course, the schoolmaster would also help the bridal family to gain some benefits. These were unavoidable. As a result, the battle for the schoolmaster title was always extremely intense. Not only would the battle involve the candidates, it also involves the legatees behind them. In the past, such a clash would only happen among the top 10 legatees. This was the first time that a schoolmaster doesn't belong to any of the 10 legatees. However, after thinking about the foundations the Tibetan Star Summit had, everyone didn't object anymore. After all, the Tibetan Star Summit was once among the top 10 legatees. Most importantly, a transcendent realm expert would appear in every generation of the Tibetan Star Summit. If it wasn't for them focusing on the Tibetan Star Sutra, they might have already produced a schoolmaster a long time ago. Numerous legatee representatives were by the enormous ancestral peak. Due to the abundance of the true martial school's disciples, it wasn't possible to fit them all into the ancestral peak no matter how large it was. Besides, many representatives of the extraterrestrial overlords factions and the true martial domains factions were sent here. As such, every legatee would only be allowed to dispatch a few representatives ahead. Naturally, the Tibetan Star Summit didn't have many people to begin with, and the next-in-line schoolmaster could bring his own family and his bridal family members along. It's been a long time since I've seen the senior brother. I wonder how he is now. He had become the supreme schoolmaster. He must be extremely domineering now, said Deng Shuixin, and she tilted her head in a cute manner. She already had such a personality to begin with. It wouldn't change even if she had become the senior sister of many other disciples. While she was Yi Zaiwen's senior sister, she acted more like a junior sister. Of course, the supreme schoolmaster will definitely be very domineering, said Yang Wenjun. Originally, he expected the senior brother to only become the next Tibetan star son. He never expected him to become the next schoolmaster. After all, the schoolmaster's position had always been chosen among the top 10 legatees. As for the Tibetan Star Summit, they had been out of that category for many years. In the Tibetan Star Summit, they were all treated as actual younger generations. As such, they acted very casually and wouldn't put other matters in their mind. When the Tibetan Star Summit group arrived, they were led into a plaza by the ancestral peak. Today's ascension ceremony would be conducted within this plaza. The plaza had been divided into 3 parts. One part was naturally for the representatives of each lineages within the true martial school. It occupied the most space. As for the other part, it was for the extraterrestrial overlords' representatives. Those that occupied some parts in the true martial domain had all sent their representatives over. The last part was for the representatives of other forces within the true martial domain. As for the representatives that didn't belong to these huge factions, they didn't even have the chance to enter the plaza. As soon as the Tibetan Star Summit group entered, they saw many of the true martial school's lineage's disciples. The Tibetan Star Summit's group was arranged to be beside the top 10 legatees. As the new schoolmaster's bridal family, along with a transcendent realm expert, the Tibetan Star Sun leading them, they naturally had the qualifications to remain there. However, the Tibetan Star Sun didn't sit together with them. Instead, he sat by the very first row. More than 20 transcendent realm experts of the true martial school had all appeared. They swept their cold gaze across the crowds and prevented anyone from doing anything that would bring harm to the school. After Yi Shiwen sat down, he didn't care about anyone else's actions anymore. Instead, he peacefully entered the Tianyuan mirror. Within the deep parts of the little cosmos within his body, the Tianyuan mirror was emitting a blood-colored radiance, and a majestic power surged from within. It was the power of a transcendent realm expert. Until now, Yi Shiwen had yet to come in contact with that power. Although it was the power of the Tianyuan mirror, Yi Shiwen could use a part of it as his own power. With that power, he wouldn't be so powerless when facing a transcendent realm expert, just like how he was last time. Even if a transcendent realm expert's attacks with full force were to befall upon him, the Tianyuan mirror would block it for him. With this, he would have the qualifications to battle against a transcendent realm expert. The disparity in strength between the half-step transcendent realm and the transcendent realm was like the heavens and earth. No matter how strong a half-step transcendent realm expert was, he would be like a suckling in the eyes of a true transcendent realm expert. However, with the assistance of the Tianyuan mirror that had evolved into a transcendent tool, everything would be different. He could utilize the power of the Tianyuan mirror to temporarily deal with the transcendent realm expert's attacks. Although the power released by the Tianyuan mirror was related to Yi Zaiwen's strength, there was a dragon vein deep within the Tianyuan mirror. He could just utilize the power of the dragon vein, which would allow him to achieve the power level of a transcendent realm expert in a short amount of time. However, it would only be temporary. Even the power contained within the dragon vein was unable to continuously allow the Tianyuan mirror to explode with the power of a transcendent realm expert. This was just a temporary strength. If he wanted to fight against a transcendent realm expert, it would depend on when his Star Beast avatar would enter the transcendent realm. When the time comes, only would he be classified among the top-notch experts. When the time comes, no matter how big the world was, he would be able to go anywhere he wanted to. As he thought about this, Yi Shiwen suddenly thought of when he should let the Star Beast clone undergo retribution. Currently, the Star Beast avatar was about to enter the transcendent realm. Within the past 30 years, he had built an extremely sturdy foundation for his cultivation. The only thing left for him would be to undergo retribution. After passing the retribution, he would naturally become a transcendent realm expert. The Star Beast avatar was already a great sage, great perfection realm, so it would never undergo heaven's retribution before reaching the transcendent realm. However, it was different now. If he wanted to enter the transcendent realm, he would have to face a grand heaven's retribution. Under normal circumstances, the more mutated one was, the more horrifying the heaven's retribution they would undergo. After contemplating for a while, he decided to find a quieter place to pass the heaven's retribution after this ceremony ends. He could feel that the anxious atmosphere had not been dispersed yet. On the contrary, as time passed, it was slowly growing more and more. Although he wasn't sure why the extraterrestrial overlords wanted to enter the true martial domain, he knew one thing for sure. If they hadn't seen something that they desired to witness, they wouldn't leave. In fact, it might even cause a huge clash. The true martial school is nothing special. If it wasn't for that true martial stone sword, they would have been crushed flat ages ago. Just as Yi Shiwen was deep within the Tianyuan mirror, a sudden burst of fanatical laughter resounded from far away. Everyone present had an extremely high cultivation. Although it wasn't very loud, this voice wasn't masked at all. In the end, almost everyone present heard this voice. All of a sudden, the entire plaza became quiet. Everyone looked towards the source of the sound, and saw someone speaking loudly within the extraterrestrial overlord's area. He wasn't afraid of anything, and never placed such a situation in high regard. Yi Shiwen let out a sigh, and quickly pulled his mind out. The one that wants to insult us is here. He knew that those extraterrestrial overlords would never let go off such a chance so easily. Although no one would dare to infiltrate the true martial domain so easily, they were willing to do other things like shaming the true martial domain, as long as they were able to pressurize them. Everyone's gaze quickly shifted to the direction of the true martial school. They wanted to see what kind of response the true martial school would have. The supreme schoolmaster, Huang Wuji, was sitting by the stage. There weren't any expressions written on his face, as if he didn't hear the man's comment. Everyone knew that he must not simply say anything. After all, his words would decide the actions of the true martial school. Everyone was watching at the true martial school's reaction. What kind of reaction would they have after such an insult? Yi Shiwen took a deep breath and stood up. He strided forward towards the man that shouted with a smug smile. Everyone looked at Yi Shiwen. They didn't know what he was about to do. Yi Shiwen walked up to the youth with a smile. Then he suddenly took action. He slapped the arrogant person's face with lightning speed. Pa! A clear slap resounded. The arrogant youth that spoke was slapped away. Everyone on the spot was shocked as they just watched Yi Shiwen taking action. No reactions were shown by them. Maybe Yi Ziwen's actions were too quick, or maybe they never expected Yi Shiwen to suddenly take action, especially when there were so many transcendent realm experts around. Ah! The youth suddenly screamed like a pig being butchered. It wasn't because his endurance was bad. Instead, Yi Shiwen was too strong. His flesh was as tough as metal. After receiving the slap, the youth's head was almost torn apart. Even so, his entire row of teeth were crushed. He fell onto the ground and let out a tragic scream. Why did you do that? Beside him, a transcendent realm expert leading a group suddenly burst with anger. A terrifying aura oppressed Yi Ziwen's body with the intention of crushing his body entirely. Is this how you true martial school treat you guest? He was the transcendent realm expert of the White Sun sect, Sun Honghua. He had been cultivating for God knows how many years. Currently his aura was all oppressing Yi Shiwen, as if it intended on crushing him. A blood-colored brilliance arose from his body and protected him. The overbearing transcendent realm power's oppression instantly vanished into nothingness. How we treat our guests? Are you acting like a guest? Why don't you look where you are at right now? Didn't your parents teach you manners? Said Yi Shiwen coldly. Chapter 783. Getting slapped in the face again. Yi Ziwen's words were harsh. In the next instant, more than 10 glares both shot towards Yi Shiwen from the representatives of the White Sun sect. Yi Ziwen's slap on this youth wasn't an act of vengeance in their eyes. Instead, his actions just shamed the White Sun sect. Yi Shiwen didn't care at all. Yes, I just slapped the face from your White Sun sect. What about it? This youth would only say these kinds of words in such a situation if someone instructed them to do so or was uneducated like what Yi Shiwen said. After all, he was giving out such atrocious comments in such a location. If someone instructed him to do so, it would imply their provocation against the true martial school in an attempt to shame the school. Everyone knew what the Supreme School Master meant to the true martial school. On such an occasion where the ascension ceremony was happening, saying such words would be publicly shaming the Supreme School Master. It would also cause defamation towards the true martial school. If that were the case, it would imply an all-out war against the true martial school. If they were to take action, the White Sun sect's experts would be annihilated completely. No matter if the White Sun sect would seek revenge against them or not, they would be dead for sure. If it weren't, then it would merely be the conflict between Yi Shiwen and the youth. Contempt painted on Yi Ziwen's face. There were some matters where his senior brother, Huang Wuji, was unable to do due to inconvenience. However, he could. He didn't have to care about the repercussions. Things had already reached such a level. There was no need to maintain a peaceful atmosphere between them. Could it be that you ordered him to do so? Yi Shiwen ignored Sun Honghua's overbearing aura. A normal person wouldn't be able to withstand the oppression of a transcendent realm expert. However, utilizing the Tianyuan mirror, Yi Shiwen was able to ignore Sun Honghua's aura. Song Qinghua's nerves were popping, and he was boiling with rage deep down. However, he would never admit that he made the order such circumstances. Otherwise, things would escalate even further. Of course not. Sun Honghua squeezed these words out through his teeth. Under the situation where he wasn't able to take action, using his aura to oppress Yi Shiwen would be the simplest way to deal with him. If Yi Shiwen were to make a fool out of himself, Sun Honghua would be able to regain his pride. However, to his surprise, Yi Shiwen didn't even budge from it, as if his aura were non-existing. He couldn't do anything to Yi Shiwen at all. It's great that it's not your order. You're also aware that this is my senior brother's ascension ceremony, and everyone's a little anxious here. It'll be bad if we started a fight here. Yi Shiwen smiled as if he was a despicable man that had won a fight. It immediately made Sun Honghua boil with rage. Yi Shiwen greatly angered him. However, I still think that your White Sun sect should educate your disciples better. Having people of such caliber around would only tarnish your reputation, isn't that right? He can't even withstand one of my slaps, and yet he intends to criticize our true martial school. He doesn't have the qualifications to do so. Understand? After hearing what Yi Shiwen said, everyone immediately noticed something. The youth was a half-step transcendent realm expert. And yet, his teeth were shattered, and his skull was cracked open. What kind of strength does Yi Shiwen now possess? His strength was strong beyond comprehension. It was absolutely unbelievable. Many people felt this way. Adding on the fact that he wasn't affected by Sun Honghua's aura at all, they thought, could it be that he has ascended into the transcendent realm? Many true martial school disciples had the same thought. If it were anyone else, they wouldn't believe it at all. However, if it was Yi Shiwen, they became uncertain of it. Yi Shiwen was a legend in the true martial school. In the short span of 100 years, his cultivation had shot towards the half-step transcendent realm. It was already unbelievable to begin with. Every time when someone thought that they saw the true extent of his strength, he would explode with an even stronger combat power, which would shock everyone. It was impossible to tell how strong he was. Now, 30 years have passed. Many people thought he could have entered the transcendent realm already. Sun Honghua's anger escalated greatly, with his heart almost burst because of it. However, he couldn't do anything to Yi Shiwen. Of course, Yi Shiwen knew that they wouldn't dare to harm him. After all, this was the most important location of the true martial school. If they dared to take action, they would die a horrible death. Although his heart was almost bursting from rage, he forcefully squeezed out an ugly smile. Thanks for worrying. However, our White Sun sect's disciples would naturally be taught by the White Sun sect. I'm just afraid that your education system is lacking, and the rules of your White Sun sect are too lax. A smile flashed across Yi Zaiwen's mouth. Currently, he knew that the true martial school had to stand strong against any kinds of challenges thrown towards them. A lion or a tiger might not eat a wolf. However, if the wolf was gravely wounded, they might rush towards the wolf and gobble it up. As Yi Shiwen was speaking, his gaze swept towards the other extraterrestrial overlords' representatives and saw quite a few prideful youths among them. He smiled lightly and said, "I just hope that matters like these wouldn't happen anymore. Otherwise, it would be awkward for everyone in this ceremony." The other extraterrestrial overlord forces felt that their faces were burning hot, as if Yi Zaiwen's slap had also landed on their face. Previously, they came to a silent agreement. They wanted to wait for the youth to cause a ruckus, and they would then support him to criticize the true martial school through oppression. They wanted the true martial school to be in an awkward situation. However, before their plan even worked, Yi Shiwen had already slapped them across the face. The slap made their face ache, which made them feel an extreme shame under such a situation. "You're just a mere half-step transcendent realm. How dare you be so presumptuous in front of us? Have you gotten tired of living?" A transcendent realm expert spoke. He was the elder in one of the extraterrestrial overlord forces, the Meteor sect. "True martial school is so arrogant. Have you forget your manners after the decline?" "That's right. The true martial school is too arrogant. How dare you let your disciple insult us? Do you want to incite a war between our two factions?" "That's right. You must force this kid to kneel and apologize. Otherwise, the flames of our anger wouldn't be quenched." In an instant, numerous extraterrestrial overlord experts spoke out as a form of agreement, and their aura increased tremendously. There were a huge amount of experts here to begin with. The ones leading each team were also transcendent realm experts. If this wasn't in the true martial school, and they were oblivious of what kinds of methods the true martial school had prepared to deal with them, they would have caused a ruckus a long time ago. Initially, they were shocked by Yi Zaiwen's words. After recovering from the shock, they got even angrier. Now that someone took the lead to speak against the true martial school, they naturally went ahead to support him. Although they were foes within the true martial domain, they were unexpectedly cooperative with each other when facing the true martial school, the local force of the true martial domain. The Meteor sect's elder smiled coldly as he walked out. "Today, I'll let you understand how sinful it is to disrespect someone in the transcendent realm. If you don't kneel by today, I'll break your legs to let you kneel." The aura of the Meteor sect's elder increased tremendously. Every time he walked forward, the aura became more oppressive, as if he was climbing a flight of stairs. His aura was terrifying. However, he wasn't able to oppress Yi Shiwen. Every time his aura got stronger, the blood-colored aura on Yi Zaiwen's body grew stronger. It was like a tit for that situation. Yi Shiwen was purposefully going against the Meteor sect's elder. Two majestic auras clashed against each other midair. The fabrics of space were almost torn apart, and the aura extended towards the void. If it wasn't because for the ancestral peak space being much more solid, the entire space itself might have crumbled. This was the clash of aura between transcendent realm experts. Although Yi Shiwen wasn't a transcendent realm expert, he had the Tianyuan mirror to protect himself. He wasn't afraid of the aura at all. The Meteor sect's elder moved. In an instant, his palm was already landing towards Yi Shiwen. Thousand Star-Lord Fist. Boundless starlights were emitted from his palm one after another. They formed into a huge net and instantly crashed towards Yi Shiwen. Yi Zaiwen's expression became serious. He naturally knew of the Meteor sect's Thousand Star-Lord Fist. In fact, he even knew how to use it. However, his perception of the Thousand Star-Lord Fist wasn't even comparable to the Elder. The Elder's Thousand Star-Lord Fist was genuinely horrifying. The net was seemingly boundless, and Yi Shiwen wasn't able to escape it at all. The fist intent that filled the skies was endless and was about to crush him. Just as Yi Shiwen wanted to fight back and was attempting to activate the Tianyuan mirror, an old hand suddenly extended from the void. With just a casual grab, the starlights that filled the skies were torn apart, as if it was merely something insignificant. Then, the huge hand flung itself towards the Meteor sect's elder. Although it seemed slow, Its speed was rapid as if a few centuries had passed by in an instant. The meteor sex elder could only watch the hand slapping his face. Slap. Another loud and clear slap resounded. It came so suddenly, and everything happened too quickly. No one expected such a change in the situation to occur. Just as they watched the meteor sex elder oppressing Yi Shiwen, another hand appeared out of the blue and slapped the meteor sex elder. Blood was leaking out from the meteor sex elder's mouth. With just one hit of the terrifying strength that bombarded him, his inner organs were almost destroyed. With a tremendous effort, the meteor sex elder finally managed to suppress the horrifying strength. Who dares to attack me? The meteor sex elder yelled. His gaze instantly swept towards the crowd of the true martial school's transcendent realm experts. In such a situation, the only one that had the reason to attack and was capable of attacking would only be these people. The huge red mark on his face wouldn't be gone within a short time, as if it were insulting his ignorance. He was in an embarrassed situation right now. When he attacked, he was already on guard against any attacks coming from the true martial school. And yet, even though he had put on his guard, he was still slapped by someone. Chapter 784. I'm shaming you, what about it? For him, this was a shame. They were both transcendent realm experts. One side already had their intentions early on, while the other was not aware of anything. Although it was an attack prepared for a long time, it didn't cause Yi Shiwen to embarrass himself in public. Instead, he was slapped by someone. Not only did this slap cause damage to his physical body, but it also damaged his mentality. He was a very prideful person. Under the starry skies, transcendent realm experts were all top-notch characters. And yet, he had been slapped by someone. The void trembled as if it was the surface of the water. Ripples appeared, and a silhouette appeared from within. It was the old city lord. Currently, the old city lord didn't have his usual kind appearance anymore. Instead, there was only coldness that was emitted deep from his heart. His ice-cold gaze made one feel like they had fallen into an ice cove. He said coldly, "If you want to lose face so badly, allow me to help you." Yi Shiwen had never seen such a cold expression on the old city lord before. That old body didn't seem like it was old at all. Instead, it was surging with an unprecedented eagerness for a fight. The terrifying aura of a battle god expanded and harshly crashed upon the extraterrestrial overlord experts' hearts. It was unimaginable. Yi Shiwen couldn't help but guess what identity the old city lord possessed. After all, he had such a horrifying aura. Even among experts in the transcendent realm, there were weak ones and strong ones. Obviously, the old city lord was a top-notch expert even within the transcendent realm experts. He was peerless and unmatched, and was much stronger than the transcendent realm experts that Yi Shiwen had seen. His strength was even close to the emergent school leader. He dares to insult us. I merely wanted to educate him and make him abide by the rules. When the meteor sex elder saw the old city lord, his aura instantly became stagnant. The previous attack alone made him realize the disparity in strength between him and the old city lord. He also understood how unwise it would be to go against the old city lord now. Rules? What kind of rules do I not know of? He's my true martial school's disciple. He just needs to abide by the true martial school's rules. Who are you to have the courage to educate him? In the past, when I was still fighting against your old sect master, you weren't even there to witness it. How dare you act so arrogantly in front of me? The old city lord's gaze landed on the meteor sex elder. It instantly made him feel like he had fallen into an ice pit. Everyone instantly became silent, especially the extraterrestrial overlord experts. Usually, they were fighting for dominance deep within the starry skies. Their perceptions would naturally be much stronger than the experts within the true martial domain. Naturally, they knew of the meteor sect's old sect master. Although he had already retired for thousands of years, his name was still extremely famous. Some said that he was in seclusion to comprehend the great Tao, while others said that he had already perished. However, everyone knew the matter of the meteor sect's old sect master massacring everyone beneath the starry skies, and was unmatched. In fact, he had even calmed down the riot that happened within the Meteor sect. And yet, this old man had fought against the Meteor sect's old sect master before. No one would doubt him for having such a vast amount of experience. After all, although the forces of the true martial school were limited to be within the true martial domain, some true martial school disciples would occasionally go adventuring deep within the starry skies. There was a possibility for him to have fought against the Meteor sect's old sect master before. This made it much more terrifying. No one knew that such an old person existed within the true martial school. He was just like a living fossil. Although he had fought against the Meteor sect's old sect master before, the old sect master was someone that had already retired from the world for thousands of years. Many people even spread rumors that he had passed away. Although no one knew if the Meteor sect's old sect master had already perished or not, it was a reality that this old man was currently still vivacious. Many true martial school's disciples were also shocked. They never expected the old city lord of the Ing Exan city to have such a glorious past. Many people, even the transcendent realm experts, were oblivious of the old city lord's past. When they entered the true martial school, the old city lord was already here and had become the city lord of the Ing Exan city. They never expected him to have such a glorious past. Usually, no matter what, the old city lord would present himself to be very kind. No one expected him to have such a domineering side. This is the ascension ceremony of our true martial school's new schoolmaster. Do you want to wage war upon our true martial school? They'll give you two choices as well. First, atone to your sins by dying, or you can also kneel and apologize. The old city lord didn't even bother looking at the Meteor sect's elder. His gaze was ice cold, as if he was looking at a dead person. The Meteor sect's elder's face was instantly flushed red. His heart was feeling frustrated, and he wanted to vent out his anger. However, he couldn't do so. Facing this peerless expert that had fought against his sect's old sect master, he understood that he wouldn't have any chances of winning. There was an essential gap in strength between the two of them. "You're going overboard with the bullying," the Meteor sect's elder yelled in anger with his face flushed red. He only felt that the old city lord was bullying him to the extreme. However, he never thought about the fact that he was challenging the true martial school's new schoolmaster during his ascension ceremony. From the perspective of the true martial school disciples, he was also bullying them to the extreme. To the true martial school, the supreme schoolmaster was of utmost importance. Wasn't he also going overboard when he decided to challenge the schoolmaster during his ascension ceremony? Naturally, he wouldn't think that way. He would only feel that the true martial school was going overboard. After all, they were forcing him to kneel. This was to humiliate the Meteor sect. "This senior, aren't you a little too arrogant?" The White Sun sect's elder, Sun Honghua, stepped forward and spoke. He wanted to use this chance to put pressure on the city lord. "We're here to congratulate the true martial school sincerely. Is this how you treat your guest? Do you want to humiliate us?" "Scram aside. There's no qualification for you to speak here," said the old city lord as he coldly glared at the White Sun sect's elder. He was ice cold and overbearing. "We're all extraterrestrial overlords. What are your intentions in shaming us? Do you intend to wage war between the true martial school and us?" The Meteor sect's elder blurted out with these words with his face still flushed red. As he was speaking, he looked at the true martial school's disciples upon the stage. These words were threats. Although this was the true martial school's territory, the true martial school's disparity in strength against the forces backing them up was huge. To his surprise, no expression was displayed on the disciples of the true martial school, as if they never heard of what he spoke. The silence was their way of agreeing and supporting the old city lord's actions. "Wage a huge war? With your capabilities? You don't have such capabilities to do so," said the old city lord without being courteous. He was overbearing, and his aura was as sharp as blades. An unprecedented intense aura surged, and it was impossible to see through it. The Meteor sect elder's aura became stagnant. Indeed, even if he was killed on the spot, and the Meteor sect wanted to cause a ruckus, it would be hard to incite a war between the two huge figures. After all, he was just a transcendent realm expert. If they were to fight against each other, it might result in the death of 10 or more transcendent realm experts. It wasn't worth it at all. As such, just like the emergent school leader had previously said, waging war for Yi Shiwen was merely a guise and a mere joke. It happened because they had already intended to wage war. As for the matters regarding Yi Shiwen, it was merely a guise. No one would believe that the emergent school leader would attack the true martial school in such a fanatical manner just because Yi Shiwen had killed one of their great sages. A great sage was nothing at all to them. Even if it was a transcendent realm expert, it was nothing compared to two massive forces. If the meteor sect were to attack them one day, it would be because they knew every detail regarding the true martial school and had nothing to fear anymore. It would not happen just because of the death of an elder. Currently, so many extraterrestrial overlords were staring intently at the true martial school. And yet, they didn't dare to attack them. After all, they couldn't tell how strong the true martial school was now, and couldn't understand the conditions of the true martial stone sword. Even if all of you are dead, they would still do what they should do. Don't regard yourself too highly. The old city lord glared at the crowd. He didn't pay attention to any of them at all. Even in the transcendent realm, there were strong ones and weak ones. It was apparent that no one present was able to go against the old city lord. Make your choice. Atone to your sins by dying, or kneel down and apologize, said the old city lord. You. The meteor sect's elder was extremely angry. However, he dare not refute him. If he were at any other place, he would have already refuted him. However, this was the true martial school. If he were to refute, it would only result in him being killed on the spot. He knew that what the old city lord said was correct. Even if he died, it would be useless. Before the meteor sect indeed decided on waging war against the true martial school, the war wouldn't happen. Enough. Today's a joyous day for me. They'll just spare his life. Upon the big stage, Huang Wuji finally spoke. There weren't any emotions within his words, and it was unknown what he was thinking. They'll forgive you this time, thanks to the schoolmaster. However, if any of you dare to speak such words again, I won't forgive you. The old city lord's gaze was ice cold and was sharp as blades. He swept his gaze towards the crowd, stepped forward, and disappeared in thin air. When he reappeared, he was already seated among the true martial school's transcendent realm experts. Yi Shiwen intended to go back, but these extraterrestrial overlords that had the intentions of challenging the true martial school didn't stop just because of that. The ones that were humiliated previously were the elders of the meteor sect and the white sun sect. However, since the others weren't humiliated, they didn't care at all. I heard that the true martial school's new schoolmaster is a heroic youth. He's able to ascend to the schoolmaster's position at such a young age. Our heavenly martial sect has a heroic youth as well and intends on challenging the schoolmaster. Do you have the courage to agree to it? Said a middle-aged transcendent realm expert with a mustache on his face. The true martial school instantly experienced an uproar. Chapter 785. Using a sledgehammer to crack a nut. I heard that the true martial school's new schoolmaster is a heroic youth. He's able to ascend to the schoolmaster's position at such a young age. Our heavenly martial sect has a heroic youth as well and intends on challenging the schoolmaster. Do you have the courage to agree to it? Said a middle-aged transcendent realm expert with a mustache on his face. The true martial school instantly experienced an uproar. The reason was straightforward. The heavenly martial sect wanted to challenge the schoolmaster with one of their disciples. Anger instantly painted everyone's faces. It was a blatant challenge while belittling the true martial schoolmaster. Never mind Huang Wuji's cultivation strength, his status was already equal to the numerous overlords that held high authority. In reality, based on the positions of everyone present, no one could match up to him. Even these extraterrestrial overlord elders' status was lower than Huang Wuji's. Naturally, the youth of their sect would have an even weaker status. It wasn't just lower by a few levels. Even the seniority was entirely different. There was no way to compare the two of them together. And yet, The heavenly martial sect's elder wanted to let their young talents challenge Huang Wuji. Wasn't he just planning on shaming the true martial school? Do you see this? The true martial school's schoolmaster isn't worth anything. He's just comparable to the youth in our sect. This sentence made Huang Wuji enter an awkward situation. If he accepted, it would disgrace his seniority. If he rejected, he would be considered to have chickened out. Even if he won, nothing beneficial would happen. After all, it was expected that the schoolmaster could defeat a youth. However, if he lost, the entire true martial domain would know that the true schoolmaster had lost to a youth. Everyone understood what kind of dangerous intentions they harbored and displayed an angry expression on their face. He was purely humiliating the true martial school. Even if he didn't do anything, he would be able to degrade the true martial school. As such, the true martial school's disciples were furious. For so many years, although the true martial school hadn't been governing the true martial domain, they were still a huge force. Even a vast force of the true martial domain wouldn't have the courage to act so presumptuously. However, ever since these extraterrestrial overlords arrived, the true martial school felt an apparent pressure from them. They were more potent than the true martial school. Even the various forces that were going against true martial school were annihilated by these extraterrestrial overlord forces, which had shocked the entire world. They didn't even hold the true martial school in high regard and were scornful towards them. They treated the true martial domain as the indigenous people of a rural area. Thinking back to the glorious state of the true martial school, and how these people would belittle them like they were some indigenous people, the disciples of the true martial school held a deep rage within their hearts. Now, these extraterrestrial overlords wanted to use this method to shame them. It made everyone throughout the true martial school rage. Even Yi Zaiwen's expression was gruesome. These extraterrestrial overlords are persistent. Even God would get angry. However, the heavenly martial sect's elder's gaze traversed through the void and looked at Huang Wuji, who was on the stage, along with his ethereal voice. He didn't care about the true martial school's rage. Shim? Nope. For him, this wasn't counted as shaming them. He merely wanted to test the strength of the true martial school. The true martial school suddenly changed their schoolmaster, which caused the outside world to ponder what had happened. Some people said that the true martial school's schoolmaster had exhausted all his vigor during the last 10 years of warfare and was about to perish soon. There were also many kinds of rumors. For the extraterrestrial overlords that had been coveting on true martial domain for many years, they wanted to know what had happened. Since it was impossible for them to challenge the original schoolmaster, they would challenge the new schoolmaster. Based on the strength of the new schoolmaster, they would be able to guess if the ascension was rushed, or if it had already been in preparation for a long time. If it happened because they were in a rush, the extraterrestrial overlords would have a vague understanding of true martial school's strength. If the ascension of the new schoolmaster happened too rashly, and Huang Wuji was merely a replacement for the empty spot, it would imply that the formal schoolmaster was deeply wounded during the last 10 years of warfare. The supreme schoolmaster had only attacked once during the 10 years of war. If so, then he was receiving backlash from the true martial stone sword. It would also imply that the true martial stone sword couldn't be used continuously, and there were specific reasons for such a strength to be unleashed. In other words, without the pressure of the true martial stone sword, the true martial school would be like a small white rabbit, while the extraterrestrial overlords would become a pack of hungry wolves and tigers. Without any protection, it could only await its fate of being massacred. Although the true martial school was much stronger than the forces within the true martial domain, it was useless. Without the protection and pressure of the true martial stone sword, forces in true martial domain might get defeated by the oppression of the extraterrestrial forces. After all, the true martial school was now considered the local representative force of the true martial domain. If the true martial school were to be destroyed, the other true martial domain forces would have to contemplate whether they should leave the true martial domain. Even if they left the true martial domain, their future was uncertain. But it was still much better than being annihilated. However, such actions were undoubtedly considered blatant provocations to the true martial school's disciples. This untalented Ran Qingtan would like to be given pointers by the schoolmaster. At this moment, a youth martial warrior stepped out at an appropriate moment. His figure was huge, had thick eyebrows and huge eyes. His aura was sharp and domineering, and he was exuding the aura of a transcendent realm expert. He had just entered the transcendent realm very recently and had yet to stabilize his cultivation. And yet, he was dragged here. It was apparent how urgent the situation was. At the same time, it was apparent how much of a difference in strength the true martial school and these overlords possessed. Within the true martial school, other than the senior brother, Huang Wuji, who was being nurtured with utmost priority, no one else had entered the transcendent realm. Even Mu Xingjie had only reached the half-step transcendent late realm. He was still far away from ascending to the transcendent realm. The disparity in strength was extremely apparent. Wei Mingyang of the 8-star school. Also willing to accept pointers from the schoolmaster, said another white-shirt man that walked forward and cupped his hands. He was from the 8-star school, one of the extraterrestrial overlords. His strength wasn't any different compared to that of Ran Qingtian. Mu Qingman of the 10 Extremities sect would like to challenge the schoolmaster as well. It was an extreme beauty that looked like she was around 20 years old. Her long red robes highlighted the perfect outline of her body. On her delicate face was a few hints of coldness. Although she had just ascended to the transcendent realm, she had ascended after all. She was still a powerhouse figure that was a little lower in terms of seniority. Her body was already surging with the demeanor of a transcendent realm expert. Shi Zhiyong of the Ancient Origins Palace would like to join in as well. This was a middle-aged-looking martial warrior. His body was leaking with a mature aura that was much thicker than the sharp character that others possessed. The faces of everyone in the true martial school instantly turned pale. This is pure provocation. It is a provocation that is planned for a long time. They had most likely already discussed these beforehand. Otherwise, how could they have 4 new transcendent realm experts at such an appropriate timing? Isn't this purely for shaming us? Some people were thinking much deeper into it. They realized that they were miles apart from the extraterrestrial overlords. At least, their nurturing of the transcendent realm experts were much weaker. If it weren't for them nurturing Huang Wuji with utmost priority during the past few years, which allowed him to enter the transcendent realm, there wouldn't be anyone in the transcendent realm within the youth. However, these overlords had such talented youth. Although they were considerably younger, each of them possessed an unparalleled strength. A transcendent realm expert would be respected no matter where they go. As for a young transcendent realm expert, they wouldn't be underestimated no matter where they are. They gave in all their efforts and finally managed to nurture one. And yet, these overlords had casually found 4 of them. For the true martial school, this was an unimaginable amount of pressure. The 4 of them attacked at the same time, and their terrifying auras connected as they lunged towards Huang Wuji, who was by the stage. Even the skies seemed like it was about to fall from the oppression of such a terrifying aura. Any one of their attacks would wipe out an area. With the 4 of them, it was terrifying even if they were just leaking their aura. Many true martial school's disciples were already feeling a little despair. The 4 of them were too strong. Even the aura that they leaked out alone was already so terrifying. It would be unimaginable if they were to attack. Although Huang Wuji had been famous for many years, it wasn't enough to curb their worries. If his opponent was merely in the half-step transcendent realm, everyone believes that he would win. After all, he had been famous for many years, and his strength was extraordinary. However, among the transcendent realm, Huang Wuji was just an amateur that had just ascended very recently. It was hard for others to believe him. The row of half-step transcendent realm youthful experts below stared at the 4 experts in an unresigned manner. Mu Xingjie was already not far off from the transcendent realm, yet he felt helpless. He was just half a step away. However, even with this half step alone, it made the disparity in strength between him and these 4 top-notch experts as huge as the distance between the skies and the earth. Can a half-step transcendent realm expert be compared with a transcendent realm expert? Of course not. As such, they had no choice and could only watch these 4 people shame the true martial school. After all, even if they went up, it would only result in their death. They wouldn't even be able to withstand an attack. Even if they had just ascended to the transcendent realm for a short while and have yet to stabilize their cultivation, it was simple enough to kill them. At such a moment, they could only tighten their fist with a pale face. They wouldn't even be able to stand up against them. Everyone looked at the Supreme Schoolmaster and wanted to see how he would react. In truth, in such a situation, he would be in the wrong no matter how he dealt with it, whether he accepted the challenge or not. What a joke! My senior brother has to take action to deal with all of you? There's no need to use a sledgehammer to crack a nut. A clear voice resounded from the side. Chapter 786. Come at me together. Everyone looked towards the source of the sound and realized that it was none other than the Yi Shiwen that had yet to back off previously. Yi Shiwen had a slothful attitude, and he slowly walked over to them. Everyone widened their eyes and looked at Yi Shiwen. They didn't know what Yi Shiwen would do. If it were previously, they wouldn't care about such an insignificant character like Yi Shiwen. However, after the previous matters, they didn't dare to look down on such an irrelevant character like Yi Shiwen anymore. The previous slap had already displayed his bravery. He was genuinely overflowing with audacity. He was someone that would be hard to deal with. When such a person suddenly interrupts during such a situation, it made people wary of him. Can't he tell what kind of situation this is? When transcendent realm experts take action, an insignificant character like him wouldn't have the chance to step into it. Or he shouldn't even have come out. Otherwise, he would be stepped on by others at any time. And yet, he had appeared. It made many people confused as to what he wanted to do. You again? The Meteor Sect's elder and the group glared at Yi Shiwen. It was because of Yi Shiwen that they were humiliated by the Old City Lord. However, they didn't dare to put the blame on the Old City Lord. After all, they knew that the Old City Lord was much stronger than them. As for Yi Shiwen, they weren't worried about him at all. You again? Do you want to die? If that's the case, I'll fulfill your desire. Wei Mingyang, who clad in white clothes, glared coldly at Yi Shiwen as if he was looking at a corpse. He disregarded Yi Shiwen at all, as he felt that Yi Shiwen didn't have the qualifications to speak to him on equal grounds. Yi Shiwen was just a mere great sage. Even if he was in the half-step transcendent realm, the disparity in strength still exists. They only understood how laughable their thoughts were after they managed to ascend to the transcendent realm. The disparity in strength between a half-step transcendent realm expert and a transcendent realm expert was too huge. Transcendent realm was an entirely different caliber. Previously, they were looked down upon by such people. Now, they had the qualifications to look down on others. Just like how Yi Shiwen hated them, they didn't like this person that kept meddling with the situation either. I'm just telling the truth. Who are you guys? Do you think you have the qualifications to let my senior brother take action personally? It's truly crushing a nut with a sledgehammer. I alone am sufficient in dealing with the four of you, said Yi Shiwen as he squinted his eyes with a smile. At such a moment he was forced to come out. After all, no matter what his senior brother did, he would be in the wrong. Without accepting the match, it meant that he chickened out. If he took the match, he would be laughed upon by others, no matter if he won or lost. If he won, he would be said to bully others. If he lost, he would be called someone that couldn't even defeat someone of the newer generation. Very quickly, people would be able to determine the strength of the true martial school. This was precisely the part which the true martial school didn't want others to see the most. As such, Yi Shiwen had no choice but to step out now in such a situation. Seems like you want to die. If that's the case, allow me to fulfill your desire, said Wei Yangming in a cold manner. His white shirt swayed lightly by the gentle winds. He seemed like a white god of death with the ice-cold killing intent enveloping the sky. It's pointless for all of you to come one after another, said Yi Shiwen. The four of you can come to attack me together. After all, there's no difference. Presumptuous. Arrogant. Is the true martial school filled with such people? Arrogant. Just as Yi Shiwen finished speaking, the representatives of the extraterrestrial overlords immediately yelled. From their perspective, Yi Shiwen wasn't anything special. Although his previous attack was outstanding and managed to shatter the teeth of a half-step Transcendent Realm expert, a half-step Transcendent Realm expert and a Transcendent Realm expert was different in terms of strength. If provoking a Transcendent Realm expert meant death, provoking 4 at once simply meant speeding up the process. Arrogant? Am I as arrogant as you bunch? What identity do 4 of you have? You think you have the qualifications to challenge my senior brother? Said Yi Shiwen as he exposed these people's intentions without any sense of formality. These people who recently ascended to the Transcendent Realm might be a powerhouse figure within their sect. However, their identity wasn't comparable to Huang Wuji at all. In fact, among everyone present, Huang Wuji held the highest position. Not only did these people not respect him in the slightest, they even provocated Huang Wuji. This was true arrogance. Compared to them, Yi Ziwen's actions were nothing. If you're seeking death, let me fulfill your wish. At this moment, Wei Mingyang attacked. His anger had already hit its limits. Yi Shiwen was thoroughly shaming him right now. Who do you think you are? How dare you act so presumptuous in front of me? It's been too long since someone dared to act like this in front of him. Although he was still considered a youth, he was a Transcendent Realm expert. When one reaches this stage, they tend to be prideful. They wouldn't be able to bear with Yi Ziwen's provocations. His figure flickered, and he instantly reached in front of Yi Shiwen, as if he had teleported. Just as he wanted to grab Yi Shiwen suddenly disappeared into thin air. Are you thinking of running away? Wei Mingyang yelled towards the sky. As expected, a ray of golden light appeared, and Yi Ziwen's silhouette appeared at that spot. Although he could guess where he was, it was useless because of how fast Yi Ziwen's speed was. Even if he could guess where he was, he wouldn't be able to catch up to his speed within such a short time. Escape? That battlefield is merely too small. If you have the capabilities, fight together by the starry skies. Don't come at me one by one. How about 4 of you come to me all at once? After all, there wouldn't be any pressure in dealing with all of you. Yi Shiwen smiled coldly and said in a scornful tone. He didn't hold those 4 Transcendent Realm experts in high regard at all. Yi Ziwen's casual tone angered the other 3 Transcendent Realm experts. Their rage surged, like lava surging out of a flaming volcano. Brat, you must be tired of living. Ran Chengshen's nose flared from anger. With how he managed to ascend to the Transcendent Realm at such a young age, he was naturally very prideful. After being continuously provoked by Yi Shiwen, he couldn't take it any longer and instantly chased after Yi Shiwen. Behind Ran Qingtian, Mu Qingman and Shi Jiong followed after him. However, they didn't have the intention of attacking. They merely followed him out of anger. They didn't feel that they needed to attack at all. If all of them were to attack together, they would be extremely shameful. A few Transcendent Realm experts can't even deal with a great sage? Wouldn't that be a huge joke? If words about this were spread out, they would be extremely shameful. As for others, they didn't even budge. They expanded their spiritual senses and were witnessing everything happening by the starry skies. Some people in the true martial school were very anxious. They knew how strong Yi Shiwen was. He had slain multiple half-step Transcendent Realm experts before. However, everyone thought the same thing. How could a half-step Transcendent Realm expert be compared to a Transcendent Realm expert? The former had no qualifications to be compared to the latter at all. Yi Shiwen stood up at such a moment to assist Huang Wuji and prevent him from being shamed. However, such an act was useless. He wouldn't be able to deal with Transcendent Realm experts, and there were 4 of them. Only death awaits him now. When he dies, they would still want to challenge Huang Wuji forcefully. When the time comes, things would be hard to deal with. After all, the older generations wouldn't be able to take action at all. If they took action, they would be classified as one that bullies others with seniority. This would imply that the true martial school was truly weak right now. However, the real issue here was that the true martial school was currently very weak indeed. They knew about how vulnerable they were. Among the younger generations, other than Huang Wuji, no one else would be able to suppress the situation. Mu Xingjie, who was a half-step Transcendent Late Realm, wouldn't be considered bad. However, he was a tad weaker than these distinguished overlords prodigies who had ascended to the transcendent realm. And yet, with such minuscule difference between them, Mu Xingjie was unable to deal with them. Although they knew how weak they were, they couldn't expose it at all. This was the biggest problem present. Everyone had an anxious expression on their face, especially the higher-ups of the true martial school. They knew of Yi Ziwen's talents. He would be able to ascend to the transcendent realm in the future for sure. It would be a pity if he were to die in such a situation. Hesitation appeared on many people's faces. Even if they had to take action, they wanted to assure Yi Ziwen's safety. It was a waste to let Yi Shiwen die just like that. As if he had seen through the thoughts of the higher-ups of the true martial school, the heavenly martial sect's elder strode forward and said, "Since it's a spar, there might be times where accidents happen. Hopefully, everyone will forgive such mistakes." Everyone in the true martial school immediately became angry. They were taking advantage of the situation and planned to kill Yi Shiwen. They first used words to prevent the true martial school from interfering and allow the 4 transcendent realm disciples to kill Yi Shiwen. Such cruelty! Everyone in the true martial school hated the elder badly. Especially the disciples in the Tibetan Star Summit. Yi Feng and Yi Ruxue were both incredibly anxious. Previously, they only knew that their little brother was extremely well known within the true martial school and had made a name for himself. However, they never expected him to face such dangers. He had just entered the true martial school. Because Yi Shiwen makes things much easier for them, the experience they had was much different from the dire situation Yi Shiwen had previously faced. Everything was successful for them. However, only by now did he understood a little about the dangers that Yi Shiwen had encountered within the true martial school. Chapter 787. Fight against a transcendent realm expert? That's impossible. Indeed. Now, Yi Shiwen was well known within the true martial school. However, the respect he acquired was traded with him, always putting his life on the line. If it weren't for him to continue risking his life to fight others and escape death numerous times, he wouldn't have such status and popularity. There wasn't any cheating involved within. Before they arrived here, he had never expected such things to happen. This was different from when they were in Yuan sect. In Yuan sect, he had his father to shield him from hazardous situations. Later, Ling Zhantian was protecting him as well. As such, most circumstances wouldn't be too hazardous for him. However, after truly entering the true martial school, everything was completely different. No one could shield Yi Shiwen anymore. Besides, he had offended the extremely influential law enforcement hall upon entering the school. For a new disciple, it was an extremely dire situation. And yet, he had managed to overcome such a situation. After they entered the true martial school and heard of Yi Ziwen's glorious past, they treated it like a story. They didn't pay much attention to it. Even if there were any situations mentioned, they would only hear how Yi Shiwen was massacring others. They didn't know how much of danger involved within these stories. After entering the true martial school, they were led to the Tibetan Star Summit by Yi Shiwen. Their experience here was extremely smooth. They finally had the chance to witness how Yi Shiwen managed to force his way through dire situations. Moreover, he had even offended the legendary Transcendent Realm experts. How could they not be anxious? In fact, they held even less confidence than these true martial school disciples. The true martial school's higher-ups had witnessed Yi Ziwen's growth and knew that Yi Shiwen knew some powerful lost techniques. However, they were different. They didn't get the chance to witness Yi Ziwen's growth, and their impression towards him was still the same as the previous Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen killing a great sage was already a dreamlike achievement for them. Killing a transcendent realm expert was even more of a legend in their eyes. However, no matter what, Yi Shiwen and the other 4 experts were rushing outside of the true martial domain with lightning speed and fought towards the deep parts of the starry skies. Just like what Yi Shiwen had said, it was too constricting to be fighting within the true martial domain. If they weren't careful, they might destroy the ancestral peak. Although others wouldn't mind, people of the true martial school would mind. As such, he brought the fight over to the starry skies. The 4 experts surrounded him. Within them, Only Wei Mingyang took action and came closer towards him. The other three didn't have any intentions of attacking him. The four of them besieging Yi Shiwen was already shameful enough. If it weren't for Yi Zaiwen's words that forced them to do so, they would never do such a thing. It wasn't because they were kind, nor was it for moral reasons. They merely felt contempt about it. Wouldn't it be too shameful for four of them to work together just for dealing with a mere great sage? The four of them were outstanding people within their sect. None of them would be able to shame themselves this way. No matter how much you struggle, it's futile. After all, you're going to die. You can't escape, said Wei Mingyang with a cold smile. An expression of ruthlessness appeared on his face. He deeply hated Yi Shiwen for daring to shame him. Yi Shiwen sucked in a cold breath. 4 Transcendent Realm experts. Such a fanatical move. Yi Shiwen, have you gone mad? These are 4 Transcendent Realm experts. You wouldn't even be able to defeat any single one of them. What are you thinking of by attracting all 4 of them here? Yi Mo's bellow resounded within his mind. He didn't know what Yi Shiwen wanted to do. Even with the protection from the Tianyuan mirror that had ascended to a transcended tool, he merely could go against a Transcendent Realm expert. For example, he would be able to ignore the opponent's aura. However, this didn't imply that he could truly defeat one. And now he had to face 4 of them. In his eyes, this was no different from seeking death. Even the Tianyuan mirror might be destroyed in such a situation. I'm aware. It's precisely because they're Transcendent Realm experts that I had to lure them here. Otherwise, it would be impossible to deal with it. You've seen their attitudes earlier. They wanted to force the true martial school into an awkward situation. It's nothing if the school loses face. Most importantly, we can't allow them to see how weak we are. Otherwise, the Overlord Alliance would come to attack the true martial school within a short time. Such a result is much more terrifying, said Yi Shiwen coldly. Naturally, he was unequivocal what 4 Transcendent Realm experts meant. However, in such a situation he had no choices left. There wasn't any other way out. Yi Shiwen snorted coldly. The aura on his body was continuously surging. He broke through the Great Sage Realm and ascended to the Half-Step Transcendent Realm. Half-Step Transcendent Initial Realm. Half-Step Transcendent Intermediate Realm. Half-Step Transcendent Late Realm. Yi Zaiwen's aura soared till the Half-Step Transcendent Late Peak Realm. With only a tiny push, he would ascend to the Transcendent Realm. The only thing he lacked was Heaven's retribution. Previously, Yi Shiwen had changed his position with the Star Beast avatar when he was flying through the cosmos, under the situation where no one knew about it. This was also why he dared to gamble. Even if he failed, it wouldn't be an absolute fail. He still had a chance. Although his own body would receive a considerable backlash, his life wouldn't be in danger. So you've been concealing your strength? So you're in the Half-Step Transcendent Realm. However, do you think that makes any difference? Such a laughable joke. Do you think that a Half-Step Transcendent Realm would be able to deal with us, experts in the Transcendent Realm? Wei Mingyang was shocked by Yi Zaiwen's increase in strength. He never expected Yi Shiwen to have raised his cultivation strength without him seeing through it. Naturally, he didn't know that Yi Zaiwen's original body only had the strength of a great sage Great Perfection Realm. This was his Star Beast avatar. Naturally, their cultivation was different. If you only hid such a tiny bit of strength, then today is the day you die. A cruel smile flashed across Wei Mingyang's face as if he had seen something that sparked joy. Hurry up and deal with this pesky bug. I still want to assess the true martial school schoolmaster and see whether he's that strong, said Mu Qingman in a slothful manner. Her tone was chilly. She didn't even care about Yi Zaiwen's death, and even Huang Wuji as well. Please read the original from www.steambunlightnovel.com. You may not know, but we have Patreon for this translation project. That means more chapters to read. Hop into https://www.patreon.com/translation for more info. Although she was ordered to challenge Huang Wuji by her master, she had the intention to fight against him as well. Although they were around the same age, Huang Wuji was already in control of a legacy. And yet, they were just a new powerhouse figure of their sect. The vast difference between them and Huang Wuji made them feel unresigned. On what basis can he become a schoolmaster? They were jealous of him even if he was the schoolmaster of a rural area. When they held the competitiveness in their hearts, they would naturally want to win against Huang Wuji to prove themselves to be stronger than Huang Wuji. Relax. It won't take long. It would just take a while, said Wei Mingyang as he moved towards Yi Shiwen. He lunged towards Yi Shiwen, and his towering body made it seem like his attack had enveloped the entire skies. A radiating saber light instantly flashed. It slew the heavens and earth, and even chaos itself was trembling. This was the 8 Stars School's lost technique. 8 Stars' royalty-shattering saber. If it were fully released, it would be capable of slaying the heavens and earth. Yi Shiwen didn't dare to underestimate it. Wei Mingyang's attacks were too quick. In an instant, he had rushed in front of Yi Shiwen. His saber had already approached Yi Ziwen's face as if it was about to slash Yi Shiwen apart. Blood-colored radiance arose from Yi Ziwen's body as if it was a blood-dyed armor. He immediately clenched his hand into a fist. With a boom, it transformed into a massive star. He punched it against the saber attack. Boom! The long saber slashed the massive star, and a horrifying clashing sound resounded as if 2 powerful forces had clashed against each other. Within it, blood-colored power was splashing out, which made it terrifying. The long saber slashed through the massive star and landed on Yi Ziwen's fist. However, his attack was blocked by the blood-colored energy. He wasn't able to kill Yi Shiwen. However, the enormous force's ripples passed through the blood-colored armor and affected Yi Ziwen's body. Yi Shiwen was forced backward by 3 steps and finally managed to dissipate the enormous force. Yi Ziwen's eyes glinted in excitement. In the previous duel, he had lost. His fist intent was slashed apart by Wei Mingyang's saber aura very thoroughly. If it wasn't for the Tianyuan mirror protecting him, he might have been sliced into half on the spot. The disparity in strength between him and a transcendent realm expert was huge. Even so, the enormous force had managed to reach his body. If it wasn't for the tyrant body being sturdy, he might be deeply wounded by such a force alone. It was conceivable when he had to step back 3 steps to dissipate the enormous force. Fortunately, Wei Mingyang's strength was miles apart from the emergent school leader. He wasn't comparable to the emergent school leader's terrifying strength in the slightest. Even when the emergent school leader was gravely wounded, the feeling he gave Yi Shiwen was much scarier than the aura Wei Mingyang emitted. With the combat experience, it was undoubtedly extremely beneficial to him. Although he was shocked, Wei Mingyang was in even more of a shock. He let out a what sound. Yi Shiwen was merely shocked by the transcendent realm expert's strength, which he was fighting against. However, Wei Mingyang was genuinely shocked. He didn't understand how Yi Shiwen didn't die and managed to block his strength. Could it be that he's able to fight against a transcendent realm expert? That's impossible. However, before he could think of anything else, he suddenly felt the world's pressure swiftly expanding fanatically. Within the vast starry skies, dusky clouds started gathering together. Is someone challenging a retribution? This thought instantly flashed across his mind. Chapter 788, Killing Techniques Beneath the Heavens Retribution. The mighty Heavens Retribution instantly enveloped the sky. The horrifying might made the transcendent realm experts' faces pale. They had just experienced Heaven's Retribution. Naturally, they were aware that this Heaven's Retribution belonged to that of a transcendent realm. Everyone's faces became extremely pale. For Yi Shiwen, these Heaven's Retribution was totally capable of killing him when things got too dangerous. However, the opponent only had a 10% chance of surviving, especially when undergoing the Transcendent Realm's Heaven's Retribution. It was the most horrifying Heaven's Retribution they had ever witnessed. Out of 10 half-step Transcendent Late Realm, 9 of them had perished by the Transcendent Realm Heaven's Retribution. The 10% chance of survival made their faces pale upon thinking about it. The terrifying Heaven's Retribution was the reason why the number of Transcendent Realm experts was so scarce. However, no matter what they were thinking about, heaven's retribution still descended. The rolling clouds were announcing the arrival of the majestic heaven's retribution. It was too late for them to leave now. They realized that heaven's retribution had already locked on them. Unless if heaven's retribution was over, they couldn't escape no matter where they went. Standing within the center of heaven's retribution, Yi Shiwen took a deep breath. This was the first time he was experiencing a transcendent realm's heaven's retribution. In fact, this was the first time he challenging heaven's retribution using the Star Beast avatar. Yi Shiwen wasn't aware of what kind of retribution would descend upon him. Yi Shiwen smiled as he looked at the four people's faces that were extremely pale. His smile was extremely bright. They were tricked into being forced to undergo heaven's retribution. He was confident that they wanted to scold him. Currently, the true martial school was experiencing an uproar. No one expected Yi Shiwen to use such a way to fight against his enemies. Isn't this a suicidal attack? I never expected Yi Shiwen to have reached the phase of passing the transcendent realm's heaven's retribution. If we let him undergo the retribution in a quiet place, our school might have an addition of another transcendent realm expert. And yet, he's going to undergo it during a battle. A transcendent realm's heaven's retribution is already scary enough. In such a situation, it only means death. Indeed, I never expected Yi Ziwen's talents to be so outstanding. He had just entered our school for 100 years and already managed to accomplish such achievements. He can be dubbed as the #1 prodigy of the school in the past tens of thousands of years. No, it's too much of a loss if he dies here. When the time calls for it, we have to protect him no matter what the situation was. Junior brother is too rash. Does he plan to perish together with them using heaven's retribution? Said by Jian Song as he gritted his teeth, filled with hate. Of course, the hatred wasn't directed towards Yi Shiwen. It was for the extraterrestrial overlords. If junior brother experiences any casualties, I won't let them live a peaceful life. He remembered it deeply within his heart. His talents were considered decent. With enough time, he would be able to reach the transcendent realm. When the time comes, he would have the capability of taking revenge. I agree. Lu Yanlan by his side nodded coldly. Her heart was also boiling in anger. Only, she wasn't proficient in displaying her emotions. Currently Yi Feng and Yi Ruxue were all panicking. Their spiritual senses were unable to reach such a remote area. They could only listen to the description of others. When they heard of the situation, their face became ashen. Undergoing heaven's retribution while being in combat. Isn't that just seeking death? Undergoing heaven's retribution was always a dangerous matter. Preparations had to be complete to entice heaven's retribution. They weren't certain as to what would happen. Upon the stage, Huang Wuji's face was still expressionless. However, the flickering in his eyes displayed the mess of emotions he was experiencing within his heart. He knew that Yi Shiwen stood out purely for him. Otherwise, he didn't have to face such a risk. Now, Yi Shiwen only needed a little more effort to ascend to the transcendent realm. If today's matters didn't happen, he could wait for preparations to complete before undergoing heaven's retribution. However, from Huang Wuji's perspective, undergoing the retribution so rashly would undoubtedly cost his life. Yi Shiwen was sacrificing himself for his sake. That can't happen. When the critical time arrives, I can't ignore him even with my schoolmaster position. Contradictory to the true martial school's worrisome crowd, the extraterrestrial overlords were comparatively more relaxed. Naive. Does he think that he can launch an internecine attack on 4 transcendent realms with such a method? Truly naive. Indeed. What does he think transcendent realm experts are? How can such a method kill them? Shameless, truly shameless. How could he use such a method? However, he definitely would fail. Yi Shiwen laughed. Utilizing heaven's retribution to kill them? No. Yi Shiwen had never thought of using that method. In truth, it was impossible as well. Although heaven's retribution was horrifying, these transcendent realm experts weren't that easy to deal with. They would never be killed so easily. Of course, if they weren't in the transcendent realm, they would be deeply wounded or die by it even if their numbers increase. The danger lay within the cultivation gap was indisputable, after all. What Yi Shiwen planned on doing was to delay the opponent's actions with heaven's retribution. With enough time delayed, he would be able to enter the transcendent realm. With that, things would be different. The Star Beast avatar that contains the Star Beast bloodline would experience a burst in terrifying combat prowess. Currently, the foundations of the Star Beast avatar was extremely sturdy. The past few years were all used to ensure the stability of his foundations. Due to the Star Beast's bloodline lineage, as long as he overcame the Transcendent Realm's heaven's retribution, his combat prowess would experience a surging increase. The power slumbering deep within his bloodline would also awaken very quickly. He didn't need to enhance his combat power like others slowly. This was his greatest advantage. Kill him, and the heaven's retribution would end, said Wei Mingyang with an angry bellow. He was currently outraged. He could feel how thick the clouds were getting in the sky. At such a moment, the other 3 Transcendent Realm experts couldn't remain calm any longer. If heaven's retribution were to befall, the 4 of them would be affected by it. They had to kill him before the heaven's retribution's power manifest at an extremely horrifying degree. The terrifying and boundless aura enveloped everything as if it wanted to drown Yi Shiwen. It was truly horrifying. Just as the opponent wanted to take action, numerous thunders struck from the sky. In an instant, the entire cosmos became a sea of lightning. At this moment, the horrifying aura of the heavens was in full display. Everything within the sea of lightning turned into nothingness and dispersed entirely within. Just like a downpour, it instantly came down and drowned everything. The lightning sea flooded everything. Even the surrounding meteorites had turned into fragments. Yi Shiwen felt the lightning turning into one huge dragon after another in an instant, and were all bombarding his body. With the Tianyuan mirror protecting him, these bolts of lightning were unable to get near him. Like how Yi Shiwen expected, the 4 Transcendent Realm experts withstood the lightning downpour and came to pursue him. They were enveloped in layers of qi and wanted to kill Yi Shiwen instantly. Whenever the lightning downpour befell upon them, it exhausted a large amount of their qi. They weren't like Yi Shiwen. They didn't have the dragon vein buried within the Tianyuan mirror that could be used at their disposal. Bang! Ran Chengtian bellowed and made a move first. The first move he made was the Heavenly Martial Heaven's Severing Palm. It was the top-notch lost technique of the Heavenly Martial sect. His hand almost grabbed the entire world into destruction. His hand came crashing downwards towards Yi Shiwen. Within the sea of lightning, everywhere was trembling. Even the insides of the sea of lightning were trembling. The tremble was so terrifying that it even shook the entire world. Yi Shiwen had a feeling that even the skies were going to be severed. He couldn't avoid nor retreat from it and was forced to endure it with all his might. The Tianyuan mirror within his body was radiating with an even brilliant blood-colored radiance. It instantly formed a protective layer, just like a layer of armor. With his hands clenched into a fist, he went up against Ran Chengshen's attack. Boom! 2 shocking brilliance surged from within, followed by boundless energy waves. It swept through the area with an insurmountable force. Even the boundless lightning retribution sea was swept away by this terrifying force, and nothing remained. As the radiance dissipated, it was instantly destroyed by the lightning downpour. Yi Ziwen's body flew from within. Such a horrifying trembling force caused the blood-colored protection on his body to form a few cracks. Ran Chengtian didn't hold back at all. His intention to kill Yi Shiwen in the first move was so blatant. Yi Shiwen wasn't able to withstand it. The strength of a Transcendent Realm expert was much more terrifying than he had imagined. However, before he could catch a breath, the 10 Extremities Sect's Mu Qingman arrived in front of him. She brought along a boundless and horrifying aura, which instantly bombarded Yi Shiwen. In such a situation, Yi Shiwen couldn't go against her attack forcefully. He immediately expanded his demon wings, and his speed increased by a significant caliber. He turned into a ray of golden light and disappeared within the lightning downpour. When he reappeared, he was already thousands of miles away. He immediately dodged away from Mu Qingman's killing technique. Such a speed was considered to be heaven-defying. Seeing how Yi Shiwen managed to dodge their killing technique, the Transcendent Realm experts were shocked. They never expected Yi Zaiwen's speed to be so quick. Although none of them had explicitly cultivated techniques that increase speed, it wouldn't be a glaring shortcoming for a Transcendent Realm expert. Even if it was their shortcoming, it was sufficient in crushing experts below the Transcendent Realm. Chapter 789. 5 Elements Lightning Retribution. It was supposedly how powerful a Transcendent Realm expert was. Even if they didn't specifically cultivate speed, they could quickly achieve lightning speed using the Transcendent Realm laws. And yet, their attacks missed. It was apparent how fast Yi Shiwen was. After all, they didn't hold back at all. No one wanted to remain within this heaven's retribution. If this were to continue, they might not be able to withstand it. When such a moment arrives, it would result in their death. Although they didn't hold back, they still couldn't catch Yi Shiwen. This made them a little surprised. They also got curious about this man that they never understood previously. His speed was breakneck. Although it wasn't enough to deal with them, it was already shocking enough. The fact that he had a speed that was on par with theirs was shocking enough. Kill him. He must have some kinds of unimaginable treasures with him. After killing him, I shall take it from him. Wei Mingyang's eyes were already red. At such a moment, he was continuously bellowing. After being provoked by Yi Shiwen previously, he was already holding in his anger. However, there was no need for him to say these. The other 3 experts were already lunging towards Yi Shiwen. Whatever Wei Mingyang thought of, they were naturally able to think of it as well. In fact, they thought of even more things. Besides, Yi Shiwen must have possessed a martial instrument. Since Yi Shiwen was able to withstand their attacks, it must be a transcendent tool. They couldn't remain calm after thinking about such thoughts. Leaving the mysterious speed aside, they must snatch the transcendent tool. Not every Transcendent Realm expert would have a transcendent tool. Only a few qualified and extremely old seniors had the qualifications to possess it within their sections. There was no chance for these newly ascended Transcendent Realm experts to own it. The only exception was if the older batch of Transcendent Realm experts were to perish, or if they acquired it by chance. It would take too long to await the perishment of those Transcendent Realm experts. The latter would be much more reliable. In their eyes, Yi Shiwen was such a chance. However, Yi Shiwen would never give them such a chance. He instantly expanded his demon's wings and was continuously flickering around. Within this sea of lightning, he moved exceptionally naturally with the second layer of storm wings over his demon's wings. He had already successfully cultivated the storm wings a long time ago. However, he had never managed to refine it to the maximum because of the lack of such pure elements. Now, the lightning retributions were bombarding his body and were all absorbed by the demon's wings. The storm wings were initially manifested by 2 parts, the wind wings and the lightning wings. This lightning retribution that filled the skies was like a heaven for the lightning wings. Every time it absorbed the power of lightning, Yi Zaiwen's lightning wings would grow stronger. As such, Yi Zaiwen's speed in shifting and evading would be even quicker. Within the storm wings, the wind wings were used to control balance and endurance, while the lightning wings were used to control the instant explosive force. The reason Yi Zaiwen's pace in shifting around wasn't that high was mainly because of the lightning wings. As the lightning wings continuously absorbs the lightning retribution and experiences growth, Yi Zaiwen's speed became faster and faster. Although the area he was able to shift around wasn't huge, it was sufficient to move around freely. The 4 Transcendent Realm experts quickly realized that Yi Zaiwen's speed in evading became quicker and quicker. In an instant, he was able to flicker towards multiple directions. He was much stronger compared to before. The 4 of them were trying to chase after him. They were considered the most outstanding disciples among their peers. Any one of them could effortlessly chase down a half-step Transcendent Realm expert. However, even with the 4 of them working together to catch Yi Shiwen, it was no avail. At first, Yi Shiwen seemed to be in a dangerous situation. After all, these 4 Transcendent Realm experts were attacking using their full force right from the start without holding back at all. Every single time, they were at the brink of capturing and hunting Yi Shiwen. An uproar occurred within the true martial school. Everyone was worried about Yi Shiwen and the dangerous situation he was in. Yi Shiwen was almost caught at every moment. However, every single time this happened, Yi Shiwen would be like a slippery fish that always escapes from its catcher's hands and escapes from their attacks. However, as the time he managed to escape increases, the four of them became more and more impatient, while Yi Shiwen became much more agile. The lightning downpour grew larger and larger, and Yi Ziwen's lightning wings behind his back were also absorbing them much faster. It slowly reached a saturated state. When Yi Ziwen's lightning wings reached its peak state, his shifting speed would reach a genuinely terrifying state. When the time comes, even if a transcendent realm expert were to be in front of him, they wouldn't be able to catch him. His speed of shifting within a small area was comparable to others who had spatial ability. If the wind wings were able to improve, his speed would truly reach its maximum unless the storm winds were able to evolve and reach its third state. Without this heaven's retribution, Yi Shiwen couldn't cultivate his lightning wings to the perfection. While his speed was already breakneck and gradually increased along with his strength, it wouldn't reach the maximum. At least, it wouldn't reach his maximum potential. As for the opportunity to make the wind wings stronger, he had no idea about it. He only knew one thing. From the Star Beast's bloodline lineage, Heaven's retribution of the Star Beast wasn't as horrifying as his original body. However, that wasn't just it. It was merely just the beginning. From the eyes of others, the round lightning downpour had shrunk from its original size. Yi Shiwen had absorbed the boundless lightning energy as he was continuously shifting around. Others weren't fools. They would notice such a distinct change. We can't allow him to continue absorbing. Otherwise, we won't be able to catch him in the end, said Wei Mingyang with a loud yell. He was the first to notice this and was also the person that hated Yi Shiwen the most. Although they couldn't catch up to Yi Ziwen's speed, he believed that as long as the four worked together, Yi Shiwen would be defeated. Just as they wanted to take action, the retribution clouds within the skies started changing. They were radiating with 5 colors. When the 5 colors fused, 5 different kinds of thunder resounded within the clouds. 5 elements lightning retribution. The expression of the 4 transcendent realm experts changed, and their faces became pale. Their gaze, when looking at Yi Shiwen, were filled with hate. What kind of monster is this? How did he attract such a heaven's retribution? Although 5 elements thunder retribution wasn't as extravagant and horrifying as his humanoid heaven's retribution, it was considered an abnormal heaven's tributation. It was an extremely terrible heaven's retribution for someone who considers themselves lucky after successfully passing a normal heaven's retribution. If Yi Shiwen was the only one passing the retribution, they might gloat over him and hoped that he would die by it. However, they were currently dragged into it. When Yi Shiwen underwent the retribution, they would have to accept it as well. Although they had already ascended the transcendent realm, they could still feel how horrifying this heaven's retribution was. The 4 of them stopped chasing after Yi Shiwen at the same time and shifted their focus into making preparations. They weren't like Yi Shiwen and weren't able to receive heaven's retribution with their own physical body. For them, it was like a myth. The 4 of them took out their martial instruments and started laying down a formation within the void. Layers and layers of formations were quickly laid down proficiently. Although they were still new to the transcendent realm and were just starting to uncover its strength, their strength was already terrifying enough. Their skills and foundations were extraordinarily sturdy. This was extremely hard for many others. However, in their hands, it became effortless. One formation after another kept being laid down. Yi Shiwen was amazed by them possessing such strength. If it were any other half-step transcendent realm martial warrior, they would be dead long ago. 5 elements lightning retribution. Not only the 4 transcendent realm experts, even numerous people within the true martial school, could recognize it was the mythical heaven's retribution. They immediately sucked in a breath of cold air. If normal transcendent realm retributions allowed someone to have a 10% chance of survival, such a mutated heaven's retribution would be a 1% chance of surviving. As for Yi Zaiwen's original body that was a humanoid heaven's retribution, this was a destructive heaven's retribution that we would never be able to luck out. Fortunately, Yi Shiwen was no ordinary man. Otherwise, he would have been dead long ago. Even so, it was sufficient to make them shocked. Although they didn't doubt Yi Zaiwen's talents any longer, this heaven's retribution seemed to be proving it for him. Usually, the more terrifying a person was, the more terrifying their heaven's retribution would be. However, proving it at such a time yields no benefit to him. On the contrary, it would guarantee his death. Unlike the people of the true martial school, the extraterrestrial overlord's experts were all clamoring. Yi Shiwen would surely be dead this time. He won't have the chance to survive. In such a chaotic situation, the first retribution lightning of the 5 elements lightning retribution finally struck down. Chapter 790, Transcendent Realm, Buzz. A loud explosion resounded, and a bolt of striking lightning landed upon Yi Zaiwen's body. The first retribution lightning was the water lightning. Among the 5 elements, water was the most gentle law and power. There was this idiom that goes, "The kindest person's personality is just like the water." However, it would be wrong to assume that water only had its gentle side. There were floods which would destroy everything it passed through. This water lightning exploded within the air and struck Yi Zaiwen's entire body to be charred black. He had already retracted the Tianyuan mirror's protection and wanted to face this 5 elements lightning retribution head-on. For the Star Beast avatar, the 5 elements lightning retribution was something he had to go through. It was impossible to avoid it. Besides, he needed the 5 elements power to bombard his body, which would reinforce his own physical body. Slowly, he would also reinforce the Star Beast avatar using the tyrant body. With that, in addition to the Star Beast avatar's superb physique, it would be extremely strong after he managed to cultivate the tyrant body. Not far away from him, the 4 Transcendent Realm experts were receiving the first wave of attack, the water lightning. In that instant, it broke through numerous formations. It made the faces of the 4 Transcendent Realm experts pale. The 5 elements lightning retribution was too terrifying. Even the water lightning that wasn't the strongest had such a destructive force. It was predictable what kind of retribution lightning they would have to face later. They were scolding Yi Shiwen within their hearts. What kind of a monster is Yi Shiwen? How could he cause such a heaven's retribution? He's truly too horrifying. Or, how did this kind of person survive until now? When they saw Yi Shiwen retracting his red energy barrier and was forcefully contending against heaven's retribution, they had to admit that Yi Shiwen was much crazier than they had imagined. However, the more he was like this, the more they had to kill Yi Shiwen. The more terrifying someone was, the more terrifying their growth would be. If such a person didn't belong to their faction, they would have to kill him. We must kill him. Otherwise, after this heaven's retribution over, we wouldn't be able to deal with him," said Wei Mingyang with a yell. He was aware that the more terrifying Yi Zaiwen's heaven's retribution was, the more terrifying his strength would be later on. In fact, he might even surpass them in one go. This was something they definitely wouldn't allow to happen. However, before they could say anything else, they were struck by the overwhelming water lightning. Yi Shiwen was also being covered within the water lightning. Sparks were constantly appearing throughout his body, and his entire body was in no good condition. The destructive force of the water lightning was far above other normal retribution lightning. It bombarded his body and made his entire body covered in blood. Then he recovered his wounds with the Phoenix regeneration technique. He circulated the Tyrant Body scripture, and Observing People scripture, and absorbed the water lightning's power. This was Yi Zaiwen's special method of undergoing retribution. Normal people would think of ways to disperse retribution lightning. When the retribution lightning ends, only would they be considered to have passed heaven's retribution, and their cultivation would enter a new realm. However, Yi Shiwen was different. He just broke apart the power of the retribution lightning and turned it into his power. As he was reinforcing his tyrant body, he was continually breaking through as well. Very soon, Yi Shiwen realized that after the water lightning had bombarded him, it would diffuse on its own into two different elements, water and lightning. He was overjoyed by it. He absorbed the lightning elements that were surging out into the demon wings, and his movements became much more agile, like a water element swimming around the sea. Boom! 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 As the water lightning was constantly bombarding his body, he felt his physical body more durable and stronger. Very quickly, Yi Shiwen started his counterattack. He expanded his storm wings behind his back and rushed towards the sky in that instant. He continuously released the shattered star fist towards the sky, and the retribution lightning were all destroyed by him before they even descended. They were decomposed into lightning and water elements and were all absorbed by him. Even if the retribution lightning wounded his body, he would recover with the Phoenix regeneration technique. What the monster! When the four Transcendent Realm experts scolded Yi Shiwen in their heart. They were in a mess because of the water lightning, and yet Yi Shiwen was able to withstand it without any protection. How's that possible? That should be impossible. Seeing Yi Shiwen forcefully withstanding heaven's retribution, the bunch of extraterrestrial overlord experts were all dumbfounded. This wasn't any normal heaven's retribution. It was the five elements lightning retribution. Even when facing a typical heaven's retribution, they would have to be extremely careful. Otherwise, they would be struck to death by the lightning, especially by this kind of heaven's retribution, which they were sure would kill someone in the transcendent realm. They were all dumbfounded. Contrary to their dumbfoundedness, the entire true martial school faction was laughing. Initially, they felt that Yi Shiwen was too rash. However, from the looks of it now, Yi Shiwen was already extremely confident, to begin with. They were also astonished by Yi Ziwen's act of forcefully withstanding the retribution lightning. Mu Xingjie was exceptionally astonished. Seeing this scene, his remaining thoughts of fighting against Yi Shiwen were gone. Initially, he wasn't sure how Yi Shiwen was able to achieve such strength in such a short amount of time. Now, he understood the reason. If Yi Shiwen had been experiencing such hardships throughout his life, it was natural for him to be strong. Even if it was him, he knew that he couldn't stall the enemies under heaven's retribution, which would only net him a 10% chance of survival. He couldn't act like Yi Shiwen in such a situation. Huang Wuji, who was upon the stage, finally understood Yi Ziwen's intentions. Not only did he want to undergo heaven's retribution, but he also wanted to use it to reinforce his body, which would allow him to enter a solid realm. When he managed to enter the transcendent realm, his strength would be solid even among the bunch of transcendent realm experts. He was planning to kill two birds with one stone. Although he knew of Yi Ziwen's plan, he couldn't help but admire Shiwen. After all, even if someone knew what they had to do, one that had the guts to do so was extremely little. Typically, people would use all their might just to contend against heaven's retribution. Someone like Yi Shiwen that has a physical body much stronger than his cultivation, and was extremely strong could possibly do so. If ordinary people were to do so, they would be struck by lightning to death. Even the four Transcendent Realm experts could only be fully on defense against the five elements lightning retribution and didn't dare to step out of the lightning field. Of course, because of them joining in, the power of heaven's retribution targeting them had increased. However, this was enough to judge how frightening this heaven's retribution was. Within heaven's retribution, Yi Ziwen's combat prowess increased the more he fought. His silhouette became stronger and stronger within heaven's retribution, as if he was a martial god fighting within heaven's retribution. The water lightning that filled the skies dispersed quickly, and an even more ruthless fire lightning descended. Compared to how grand the water lightning was, the fire lightning was even more ruthless, and its destructive power was much stronger. If Yi Shiwen didn't absorb the lightning elements previously, which enhanced his physical Buddha state, he would be in a much more embarrassing state. Now, he was able to move around freely beneath the sky filled with fire lightnings. Contrary to him, the four Transcendent Realm experts were in agony right now. The five elements lightning retribution was already extremely terrifying to begin with. Worse still, the fire lightning was the most ruthless among the five elements lightning retribution. They were now panicked. Although they could forcefully withstand it, it was utterly different from Yi Shiwen, who was still able to move around freely. However, Yi Shiwen, who was continuously absorbing the fire lightning to reinforce his own body, couldn't be bothered at them. Even if he had spare effort, he could not do anything. Based on strength alone, Yi Shiwen wouldn't be able to defeat them as long as he hadn't entered the transcendent realm. Yi Shiwen was only using heaven's retribution to trap them. They were ultimately transcendent realm experts and were an existence that could never be underestimated. After the fire lightning, another lightning imbued with metal elements sliced through the sky and descended. Different from the ruthlessness of the fire lightning, the metal lightning was much sharper. After they were absorbed into his body, it felt like an army of soldiers had entered his body. They broke through all the nerves within his body and sliced everything instantly due to how peerlessly sharp they were. Yi Shiwen quickly adjusted the qi within his body and started suppressing the power of the metal. He slowly turned the power of metal into his strength. Yi Shiwen realized that as the power of metal was being absorbed into his body, his physical body seemed to improve. Among the abundance of shapeless powers, the power of metal seemed extremely beneficial for the physical body, and other powers wouldn't even come close to its effectiveness. After 2 hours had passed, the metal lightning had finally ended its bombardment. Within the cosmos, Yi Zaiwen's golden divinity was thoroughly surging. His boundless domineering aura expanded as if he was a tyrant that returned from the ancient era. As if he were preparing some kind of transformation, a surge of intense energy was brewing within his body, like a volcano about to break through its original location. In that instant the earth lightning bombarded him, the power on Yi Zaiwen's body finally couldn't be contained anymore and started surging out. Boom! A surge of majestic and terrifying power swept outwards, and a surge of profound strength started surging outwards, just like wave ripples. An unprecedented power started boiling within his body. Roar! Yi Shiwen couldn't suppress the surging power, and the ancient seals within his brain awakened at the same time. The roar of a ferocious beast resounded and shocked the entire world. He has ascended to the transcendent realm. An insuppressible shock appeared within Wei Mingyang and the others' eyes. Fear was written within it as well. Chapter 791. Transcendent Tool. Displaying its might for a long time, Yi Shiwen remained still. Numerous marks and the legacies within the bloodline had all awakened at the same time. Numerous star beasts' mark instantly awoken. The ancient majestic strength almost rendered him unable to control himself and almost turned back into the true form of the star beast. He finally understood why a star beast in the transcendent realm was regarded as an adult. After reaching the transcendent realm, he had awoken an innate magical power that truly belonged to the star beast, which allowed him to devour the stars. He would be able to experience a growth spurt after devouring a star's core. When a star beast reaches adulthood, only by then would his growth speed truly surge tremendously. As long as there were enough star cores, he wouldn't have any bottlenecks in cultivation. He would be able to break through continuously. In fact, he would ultimately even be able to devour an entire star and acquire an insurmountable strength. However, despite being very strong, the star beast wasn't unparalleled. Similar to the star beast, it was suppressed despite being absurdly strong. In fact, it would continue to be suppressed in the future. When Yi Shiwen remained still, Wei Mingyang and the others didn't move as well. They could feel the terrifying power surging from Yi Zaiwen's body, and forgot to attack. When they came back to their senses, Yi Shiwen had already calmed down his surging aura. Slash! A ray of terrifying sword light swept throughout the world. Everywhere the sword light passed by, the world became like water that was being boiled. A long sword immediately came slashing downwards. Laws condensed this ray of sword light and even that long sword. Whenever he attacked, it implied authority. For transcendent realm experts, even a small little retreat would result in their perishment. If they attacked, they would have to exert their strength to the fullest. The sword light sliced through the skies and instantly sliced the world into 2 parts. Yi Shiwen extended his palm. His palm filled the skies as if he wanted to cover the entire cosmos as well. The immeasurable sword light landed upon his golden palm, and the sound of metal and iron clashing against each other resounded. Clang! The huge noise resounded everywhere throughout the area. The terrifying sound waves instantly annihilated numerous meteorites, and the area surrounding them immediately became a vast vacuum area. The other 3 Transcendent Realm experts were shocked by this turn of events. They all knew how terrifying Wei Mingyang's 8 stars royalty-shattering saber was. As his competitors, they knew about it very clearly. They still couldn't be considered as fighting against each other. However, if they were to defeat numerous opponents within their sect and become their leader one day, they might immediately become enemies. This was extremely cruel. However, they had no other choice. Even though they were working together, they were wary and on guard against each other. As a result, they somewhat knew of each other's backup loss techniques. The 8 stars royalty-shattering saber was the 8 stars school's secret technique that wasn't open to others. If it were cultivated to a high enough state, it would be capable of slicing through the stars. Even they would have to use all their efforts to withstand its might. And yet, Yi Shiwen blocked it with his palm. Do metal and stones forge his body? To them, this was undoubtedly a miracle. However, although they were surprised, it didn't delay their actions at all. This time, 3 Transcendent Realm experts attacked together to kill Yi Shiwen in one fell swoop. Any attacks of a Transcendent Realm expert would destroy the world. Now, it was 3 of them. Their attacks were genuinely terrifying as they were all using their killing techniques. They could feel that the Yi Shiwen, who had ascended to the Transcendent Realm, was exceptionally horrifying. The battle between any Great Sage Realm experts was incomparable to this. This was the start of an extremely horrifying situation. Numerous waves of fanatical energy were sweeping their way towards Yi Shiwen. Within the true martial school, almost everyone was holding their breath. When they saw Yi Shiwen ascending to the Transcendent Realm, everyone within the true martial school let out a joyous shout. Contrary to them, the extraterrestrial overlord's representatives were all silent. They never expected someone to withstand the siege of 4 Transcendent Realm experts. He was still able to pass heaven's retribution under such circumstances peacefully and ascend to the Transcendent Realm. Such a miracle was way beyond their imagination. Facing these horrifying attacks, Yi Shiwen did not remain still. He instantly controlled the Tianyuan mirror and erected 4 blood-colored energy walls around him. The Tianyuan mirror on Yi Ziwen's hand was bursting with a terrifying radiance. Although the Tianyuan mirror had already become a transcendent tool, it was undoubtedly still considered a waste in the hands of Yi Shiwen. Only in the hands of a Transcendent Realm expert would a transcendent tool be able to display its mighty power. It would merely be a waste for a half-step Transcendent Realm martial warrior to use it. At this moment, the Tianyuan mirror was truly displaying the terrifying mightiness of a transcendent tool. Boom! The terrifying attacks landed upon the blood-colored energy wall and caused great windstorms. Upon the blood-colored energy wall, many formations and laws were interweaving with each other and were reviving. The Star Beast avatar that had entered the Transcendent Realm already possessed an unimaginable amount of force to begin with. The amount of chi within his body was extremely thick due to his extraordinary innate talent. The thickness of his chi was 10 folds more condensed than his original body. Even without utilizing the Dragon Vein, he could already use the Tianyuan mirror. Compared to the previous state he was in, the difference was insurmountable. Many kinds of terrifying attacks turned into nothingness in front of the Tianyuan mirror's blood-colored energy wall. In the skies, the earth lightning became more and more intense. Every single earth lightning was as heavy as a hill. When they struck the ground, it would even cause a huge crater to appear. It was extraordinarily horrifying. If this had happened previously, the threat it posed to Yi Shiwen would be huge. He would have to use all his might to contend against it. However, it was considered nothing for Yi Shiwen now. After all, this heaven's retribution was specifically designed for people who have yet to enter the Transcendent Realm. After entering the Transcendent Realm, his strength increased by more than 10 folds. To him, The attacks weren't anything now. You have a transcendent tool. Wei Mingyang instantly felt fear. He never expected Yi Shiwen to have a transcendent tool. Even among transcendent realm experts, those that possessed a transcendent tool were extremely little. Usually, only extremely old experts would own one. Only with a high enough qualification would they be able to acquire enough wealth and craft a transcendent tool. For transcendent realm experts, transcendent tools must be compatible with one's own body. As such, they would have to craft one personally. Transcendent tools like Tianyuan Mirror, Yi Mo was an extreme case. As such, they never expected Yi Shiwen, someone that had just ascended to the transcendent realm, to possess a transcendent tool. It was too illogical. Indeed, if it weren't for Yi Shiwen being able to evolve the Tianyuan Mirror continuously, it would be impossible for him to have acquired a transcendent tool. To transcendent realm experts, possessing a transcendent tool would be equal to having an assistant of the same strength by their side. On some occasions, their combat prowess would even multiply. Their strength was already inferior compared to Yi Zai's strength. Now it made them fearful. With the Star Beast Avatar's extremely high fighting talents and the Tianyuan Mirror, his strength exceeded the older transcendent realm experts that had ascended to the realm for thousands of years. Transcendent tool? The expression of everyone within the true martial school changed. They never expected Yi Shiwen to possess a transcendent tool. In truth, although minimal transcendent realm experts possessed transcendent tools, it didn't mean that transcendent tools were extremely little. The truth wasn't like this. No one knew very clearly about the number of experts who appeared throughout the history of the true martial school. Among these experts, there were many transcendent realm experts and had left behind numerous transcendent tools. Although some of them died through combat, while others perished through old age, their transcendent tools were left behind. However, even so, it was useless. After all, transcendent tools had to be crafted by oneself. As such, these transcendent tools could only be activated using specific methods during a particular time. They would be treated as trump cards. This was one of the main reasons why, despite not having as many transcendent realm experts than the emergent school, the true martial school was able to contend against them. They possessed sufficient transcendent tools and activated them during a crucial time. As long as the control over it went well, the attacks of these transcendent tools would even be comparable to the attack of a transcendent realm expert. Some damaged transcendent tools could even be torn apart and melt them back into raw materials. They would never be wasted. After all, every kind of material that could craft a transcendent tool would be costly and precious. Only with the strength of a group would one be able to do such things. Yi Shiwen had just entered the transcendent realm. Even if there were sufficient materials for him to craft one, there wasn't any time for him to do so. Crafting a transcendent tool would require an extended amount of time. And yet, they didn't have to worry about him. After all, Yi Shiwen already possessed a transcendent tool. This was something that no one else had ever expected. Since when did he possess a transcendent tool? Huang Wuji was surprised. He didn't expect it as well. However, he immediately followed up with a laugh. This brat. No wonder he dares to receive them. So he has such a trump card. Chapter 792. Defeat one after another. Initially, Huang Wuji was still worried about the safety of Yi Shiwen. In fact, like others, he felt that Yi Shiwen was a little too rash. He knew that Yi Shiwen would always do some shocking stuff with the guise of recklessness. He was sure that Yi Shiwen was not a reckless person. Yi Shiwen most likely had certain things firmed enough to back up the actions. However, no matter what he thought of, he couldn't think of what Yi Shiwen had. Even if Yi Shiwen said he could defeat 100 experts in the same realm as him, he would believe it. In his heart, Yi Shiwen could even deal with 100 half-step transcendent late realm experts. However, half-step transcendent realm and transcendent realm were two entirely different cultivation realms. Even if he could deal with half-step transcendent realm experts, he wouldn't even be able to deal with a transcendent realm expert. In fact, he might be killed with just one punch alone. If Xian Tian and Ho Tian were considered the first hurdle, then legendary and sage realm would be the second one. As for the great sage and transcendent realm, it would be the third hurdle. The hurdle that exists between them was as significant, just like the distance from the skies to the earth. He never expected Yi Ziwen's combat prowess to become stronger the longer he fought. In fact, Yi Shiwen had even entered the transcendent realm after undergoing heaven's retribution. Yi Shiwen broke through the bottleneck in one go and became the second transcendent realm expert among the peers, with Huang Wuji being the first. They were both from the Tibetan Star Summit. Despite leaving the Tibetan Star Summit after becoming the schoolmaster, the Tibetan Star Summit was still his original home. As such, he was more biased towards the disciples of the Tibetan Star Summit. Seeing how the junior brother that he had always been optimistic about was the second one to ascend to the transcendent realm, how could he not be happy? In fact, a thought even sprouted within his mind. My junior brother's accomplishments might be more than that. When such a thought emerged in his mind, it wasn't able to be suppressed any longer. After all, Yi Ziwen's performance was too shocking. When he entered the Tibetan Star Summit, he had already patched up the entire Tibetan Star Sutra. It was indeed a heaven-defying event. For so many years, numerous generations of Tibetan Star Summit's disciples had been trying to gain insight into the Tibetan Star Sutra. However, they weren't able to gain any perception of the original version of it. Otherwise, they wouldn't have to waste so much effort to venture towards the extraterrestrial areas searching for the original version of the Tibetan Star Sutra. And yet, Yi Shiwen managed to perceive it. Such luck was heaven-defying. Things such as luck exist and were non-existent at the same time. For most people, they wouldn't feel anything called luck throughout their mundane life. However, some heaven-defying people might get tripped by a great sage tool when they just take a stroll somewhere and thus manage to acquire a great sage tool. Can you say that they have no luck? Most people that have great luck would achieve an incredible accomplishment. Now, he had only cultivated for around 100 years and had already ascended to the transcendent realm. His accomplishments in the future were hard to be predicted. Seeing how Yi Shiwen possessed a transcendent tool, everyone in the true martial school let out a sigh of relief. For the first time, Yi Shiwen was gaining the upper hand. On the other side, the extraterrestrial overlord experts' expression changed drastically, especially in the sects where the 4 transcendent realm experts belonged. Their faces were ashen. Based on Yi Ziwen's heaven's retribution, the 5 elements heaven's retribution, it was apparent what kind of horrifying combat prowess he would possess after ascending to the transcendent realm. Even so, they weren't worried. After all, it was 4 against 1. However, their expressions changed drastically when Yi Shiwen displayed the mightiness of his transcendent tool. Beyond the skies, the Tianyuan mirror's blood-colored radiance was emitted as if it was a vast blood-colored energy ball. Within it, laws and laws were interweaving with each other. When the Tianyuan mirror had transformed into a transcendent tool, the transcendent realm laws were already intertwined upon the mirror. Or, the laws contained within had been awakened. Initially, the Tianyuan mirror was the martial instrument of the demon lord. Naturally, its strength would be incredibly strong. However, after receiving a grave wound, its strength plummeted to the pit bottom. Now, Yi Shiwen was merely doing everything he could to revive it and reactivate its functions. As such, even without ascending to the transcendent realm, Yi Ziwen was able to turn the Tianyuan mirror into a transcendent tool. Otherwise, he would have to be like other transcendent realm experts. He would have to slowly craft it, until the day where he might acquire a transcendent tool. Yi Shiwen attacked. As he extended his hand, boundless energies boiled within the skies. The sound of laws dancing around could be heard, without an end to it. It immediately blasted Wei Mingyang away. Among these people, Wei Mingyang's hostility towards him was the worst. He hated Yi Shiwen to the guts. As such, he was one of the people that Yi Shiwen had to kill. The vast power descended. The long sword in Wei Mingyang's hand was radiating with intense radiance and blasted upon the power. However, facing the mighty blood-colored power, it was nothing at all. Rays of blood-colored radiances bombarded upon him. The rays of blood-colored lights were everywhere. Everywhere were filled with the laws of a transcendent tool. It immediately suppressed him with the might of a colossal mountain and descended by wiping out everything surrounding it. Boom! With a loud bang, Wei Mingyang's long sword instantly shattered. The Tianyuan mirror's blood-colored light had utterly destroyed it. Pooh! Wei Mingyang spitted out a mouthful of blood. He wasn't able to bear the enormous force that landed upon him. He knelt on one knee under Yi Zaiwen's pressure. Wei Mingyang's expression was extraordinarily ugly. He was such a distinguished, prideful character and wasn't fearful of everything in the world. He had never knelt towards others before. And yet, he was currently kneeling on one knee in front of Yi Shiwen. To him, this was an extremely shameful act. He was so frustrated that he felt like spitting blood. At the same time, the combined attack of the other three people was coming towards Yi Shiwen. Bolts of earth lightning were striking their bodies and made their bodies covered in wounds. However, they didn't care about it anymore. Compared to Yi Shiwen, the earth lightnings weren't considered life-threatening at all. The three Transcendent Realm experts were strong, especially when they attacked with their life on the line. The attacking force of the three of them pierced through the sky and immediately reached in front of Yi Shiwen. Heavenly Martial Heaven's severing palm. Ran Chengtian let out a loud yell and was the first to attack Yi Shiwen. His huge palm blasted a frightening radiance, reversed yin and yang, and the four elements, earth, fire, water, and wind. The most important essence of the heaven's severing palm was to sever a part of heaven's way and turn them into his strength. The power of yin and yang and the four elements bombarded Yi Zaiwen's body. On the other side, Shi Jiong and Mu Qingman had arrived shortly after. Under such circumstances, facing the three Transcendent Realm experts' killing techniques, even Yi Shiwen would have to give up on killing Wei Mingyang for now. He turned around, and he clenched his fist. The shattered star first was instantly blasted out. A huge rumbling sound resounded, resembling the sound of a star spinning around. It immediately fell upon them. Boom! An extremely horrifying loud bang resounded. When the shattered star fist and the heavenly martial heaven's severing palm clashed against each other, a terrifying radiance of Tao swooped outwards. Although Yi Zaiwen's counterattack was done in a very hurried manner, he wasn't panicking at all. His pace remained the same. He managed to block Ran Chengshen's attack. However, Yi Shiwen did not stop. Almost at the same time, the palm of his other hand shot outwards with lightning speed. It was the sky-collapsing fire cloud hand. Now, his grasp towards the sky-collapsing fire cloud hand was not any worse than anyone from the fire cloud cave. It was much more potent compared to theirs. Bang! Yi Zaiwen's palm landed on Ran Chengshen's chest. Everything happened at lightning speed. It all happened in an instant. Although his speed was rapid, Yi Zaiwen's strength was extremely horrifying, primarily when he used the Star Beast avatar. Although he didn't use the Tyrant body, the Star Beast's physical body was already horrific enough. It was apparent how horrifying it would be after devouring the core of a star and using the star's absorbed power to reinforce his own physical body. Ran Qinggan let out a tragic scream, and a mouthful of blood was spat out. The bones within his chest were like papers and were all shattered with a crack sound. His body flew out like a cannonball and destroyed numerous meteorite fragments. Although many things happened at once, everything happened in just an instant. Soon after, Yi Shiwen immediately reacted to something. He opened the demon wings in an instant, and his silhouette disappeared. Boom! In the instant Yi Shiwen disappeared, Shi Jiong and Mu Qingman's attacks arrived and struck the location where he previously was. It pierced through the skies, and even the chaos was showing itself. Where is he? Shi Jiong was shocked. He wasn't able to see Zaiwen's silhouette at all. They had already witnessed how horrifying Yi Shiwen was previously. They naturally wouldn't assume that he would be beaten into nothingness so easily. It was impossible. Careful, behind you. Suddenly, Wei Mingyang's scream arrived from a distance. Shi Jiong and Mu Qingman were both surprised. In that instant, they felt someone appearing behind them. When Yi Shiwen reappeared, he was already behind Shi Jiong. Among the storm wings, the lightning wings had received a massive increase in strength. As a result, Yi Ziwen's explosive power in shifting had increased and reached an extraordinarily horrifying realm. Bang! Yi Shiwen created a rippling mountain seal and landed it behind Shi Xiang's back. The rippling mountain seal itself contained an adamant and ruthless power. When it landed with such force, it almost made his physical body disassembled. If it wasn't for the laws of the transcendent realm forcefully locking his physical body into place, his body might already have exploded. His physical body wasn't as strong as Yi Shiwen. He flew to a faraway place and instantly fainted. An intense panic flashed across Mu Qingman's eyes. When she saw 3 of her partners losing to Yi Shiwen, she didn't dare to remain. She turned into a ray of light and wanted to escape. Yi Shiwen snorted coldly. He would never allow her to escape. His palm immediately enveloped the skies and landed upon her. Boom! Another loud bang echoed. Mu Qingman transformed into a stream of light and was slapped towards a nearby planet like a fly. The horrifying impact caused a mushroom cloud to arise. Chapter 793. Intensified confrontation. The extraterrestrial overlords couldn't remain calm anymore after witnessing Yi Shiwen continuously defeating 4 of them in one go, especially the sex in which the 4 were in. At first, disbelief flashed across their eyes when they saw Yi Shiwen defeating these youths with limitless potential one after another. Then they became angry. Stop! The heavenly martial sex elder roared. His silhouette resembled that of a catapult, and he was about to shoot towards the cosmos. However, a loud bang resounded. He knocked against a barrier, and his horrifying momentum caused the barrier to tremble fanatically. True martial school. The heavenly martial sex elder let out a roar and looked at the true martial school's crowd. At such a moment, he naturally knew that someone of the true martial school had taken action to prevent him from saving others. If something happens to Ran Qingtian, your true martial school shall perish along with him. What you said isn't right. When dueling against each other, casualties are inevitable. Didn't you say so yourself? Huang Wuji's calm voice resounded. It was peaceful, and there were no ripples of emotions within his tone, as if he was merely mentioning something insignificant. It made the heavenly martial sex elder extremely furious. Previously, he was the one that said casualties were inevitable. However, he was merely trying to find an excuse for Wei Mingyang and Ran Qingtian to kill Yi Shiwen. He never expected that it would be used against him. The current situation was completely reversed. Not only did they not manage to kill Yi Shiwen, but they were also all thoroughly brutally defeated by him. In truth, when Yi Shiwen took out the Tianyuan mirror, he already knew that they wouldn't be able to defeat Yi Shiwen. After all, with the transcendent tool, Yi Ziwen's combat prowess would be expanded to a horrifying degree. As for the few others that didn't hold any transcendent tool, they would suffer a lot. Since he was the one who started it first, he couldn't say anything anymore, and all his emotions of reluctance were pent up. They never expected the situation to take such a huge turn so quickly. It completely exceeded their expectations. Indeed, didn't you say that casualties are inevitable? Why are you attempting to save him now? Are our true martial school such easy targets to be picked on? That's right, casualties are inevitable. It's inevitable for one to get hurt or perish when fighting. Numerous experts from the true martial school were all scornfully laughing at the extraterrestrial overlord experts. From the time when the ceremony started, they were already holding in their anger. After all, these extraterrestrial overlords had came here to provoke them. Most importantly, they even wanted their youths to challenge the schoolmaster. Their intentions to shame there were undisguised in the slightest. If it weren't for Yi Shiwen standing out, the true martial school would be shamed no matter if Huang Wuji won or lost. Now, the tables had turned. Yi Shiwen managed to fend off the 4 transcendent realm experts that joined forces with each other, and he even managed to defeat them at lightning speed. This truly made them aspire in pride. The anger that they had been penting up finally got to be released. As for the extraterrestrial overlord experts, their faces were all pale. Today, they came here to shame the true martial school and wanted to test how strong the true martial school was. However, not only did they not manage to do so, They even humiliated themselves. 4 against 1, and Yi Shiwen was previously only a half-step transcendent realm expert. No matter what excuse they mustered to explain such a situation, there was only a suitable explanation. They were merely trash. Otherwise, things wouldn't turn out like this. Only by now did everyone know why Yi Shiwen was able to go against a transcendent realm expert despite being in the half-step transcendent realm. He had a transcendent tool to back him up. However, it meant nothing. After all, it was 4 against 1. They had already gained an unfair advantage right from the start. They were destined to be humiliated. In truth, they were all feeling shameful right now. The words of the true martial school's disciples were like one slap after another, slapping on their faces. It made their faces red and felt intense pain from it. However, they couldn't do anything. Even so, these people are the youths that our sect's higher-ups care deeply for. If any one of them were to perish, your true martial school wouldn't be able to deal with the consequences," said the heavenly martial elder coldly. Since there was a way to rescue them forcefully, he decided to threaten the true martial school. Currently, although they had numerous transcendent realm experts, they weren't united at all. They wouldn't be devoted to going against the true martial school together. Besides, this was the true martial school's territory. Even if they tried their best, it would be useless. If they thoroughly angered the true martial school, they would only await death even if they were strong and capable. After hearing the heavenly martial sect's elders' words, all the elders of the Ancient Origins sect, 10 Extremities sect, and the 8 Stars school voiced their agreement. These people were indeed the disciples that their sect's higher-ups were nurturing with utmost priority. Otherwise, they wouldn't have ascended the transcendent realm at such a young age. The effort they put in was more than the true martial school's nurturing of Huang Wuji. The entire true martial school was extremely angry when Huang Wuji was merely provocated. It was imaginable how much of a ruckus the 4 sects would cause if something were to happen to the 4 of them. While they had the capabilities to smash the true martial school flat, they weren't certain of how strong the true martial school was. They didn't want to suffer too huge of a loss and end up like the emergent school. In truth, they weren't afraid of the true martial school at all. As for the elders of the White Sun sect and the Meteor sect, who thought that they were humiliated by the true martial school, they all voiced their agreement. All of a sudden, they were all being rowdy. It was as if all the extraterrestrial overlords were all agreeing with them as well. However, that wasn't the case at all. The extraterrestrial overlords were already competing against each other. When these 4 exceptional youths were nurtured, how could the other overlords not be worried? They wished for Yi Shiwen to take care of them. No, they would prefer heavy casualties on both sides. With that, they would be able to reap the benefits from it. After hearing the heavenly martial sect's elders' provocations, numerous experts of the true martial school were all extremely angry. Do they think that the true martial school is such an easy target to be bullied? Do you think that you can bully us without caring for our thoughts? Thinking about this, everyone got angry. While your extraterrestrial legacies are strong, do you all think that our true martial stone sword is a mere decoration? Arrogant, too arrogant. Just kill those 4 people. If anything, let's go against them and let us all perish together. I'd rather do so than deal with their arrogance. The true martial school's side was all burning with anger as well. The other forces of the true martial domain were all supporting the true martial school. After all, the true martial school was representing the true martial domain. They were the banner figures of the local force of the true martial domain. Facing these extraterrestrial overlords that might destroy their sect at any time, they would naturally support the true martial school. It would be for the best if they could chase these extraterrestrial overlord representatives out. At the very least, they wanted to use the true martial school as a shield to deal with extraterrestrial overlords' anger, which would allow them to survive longer. All of a sudden, the conflict between the 4 legacies and the true martial school had ascended to the conflict between the true martial school's local forces and the extraterrestrial overlords. The situation came to a deadlock, and everyone else became silent. The extraterrestrial overlord's strength was undoubtedly horrifying. Even if they weren't united together, the strength they possessed was far more robust than the local forces of the true martial school. However, The local forces of the true martial domain temporarily siding with the true martial school made the extraterrestrial overlords wary. They merely wanted to reap the benefits from this situation. They didn't desire a death match with these local forces. If such a moment arrived, they believed that the local forces of the true martial school would choose to fight them to death. As such, the situation came to a deadlock. Huang Wuji, positioned atop the stage, was now in an awkward position, as he didn't know what to choose. Although this situation looked advantageous to him, he was aware of everyone's decision and was also aware of the comparison of strength between the two sides. Any one of the extraterrestrial overlord factions was much stronger than the true martial school. And yet, the remaining local forces of the true martial domain didn't have any good intentions. They merely wanted to make the true martial school their shield to contend against the wrath of the extraterrestrial overlords, which made doing things in private much easier for them. As such, he was currently facing a dilemma. If he were to cause a conflict with 4 massive forces just because of 4 people, it would be hard for the true martial school to remain alive. On the other side, the entire true martial school were all displaying intense anger. They were determined to go against these extraterrestrial overlords. These opinions should not be neglected as well. If the hearts of everyone are lost, it would be hard to lead them. Only now did he truly experience the difficulties of being a schoolmaster. Most of the time, it wasn't just glorious alone. He had many complicated matters to attend. Just as he was facing a dilemma, Yi Zaiwen's cold voice resounded from the sky. Since all of you prioritize these 4 trash so much, bring them back. I never expected a sect that could govern over a world only to have such trash. Your sects are lacking in talents. Immediately afterward, 4 streams of lights came crashing down from the sky, and 4 large craters emerged on the ancestral peak. After the dust faded, only did everyone makes them out to be the 4 transcendent realm experts. However, they currently didn't possess any demeanor of a transcendent realm expert anymore. They were like 4 corpses that were lying down on the ground. Everyone was in an uproar, especially the extraterrestrial overlord factions. The elder of the Heavenly Martial sect and the others hurriedly went towards the experts of their respective sect and analyzed their condition, and finally weren't worried anymore. Although they were all heavily wounded, they had lost their consciousness. Luckily, they weren't dead. After undergoing recovery for a certain amount of time, they would naturally be healed back to their original condition. Chapter 794. Thoroughly shaming while they felt relieved, they were also experiencing extreme anger. Wei Mingyang and the others were considered as distinguished figures within their respective sections. And yet, they were thrown down by Yi Shiwen like garbage. This was just blatantly shaming them. However, they could only display their face of anger and couldn't say anything else. After all, Yi Shiwen had already held back. They wouldn't be able to do anything if Yi Shiwen were to kill them on the spot. However, Yi Zaiwen's words were like needles that pierced through their hearts. It made them extraordinarily uncomfortable. After all, they weren't used to being looked down upon by others. If the one speaking was anyone else, they might instantly refute out of rage and show the opponent the wrath of overlords. However, this sentence was said by Yi Shiwen. The pride in their heart, the distinguished characters weren't anything more than trash in Yi Zaiwen's hands. They had no confidence to refute against him. In such a situation, the reality was written in front of them. If they were to say anything else, they would be shaming themselves. Although they were oppressive and overbearing, they weren't wholly shameless. Since nothing's happened to these junior nephews, then all is fine. Since casualties are inevitable during a duel, it's better to be more careful in the future. Otherwise, it'll be bad if you were to make a grave mistake, said Huang Wuji in a calm tone. His words made the representatives of the extraterrestrial overlords feel like puking blood. Junior nephew? You had just become the schoolmaster for such a short time, and yet you already assumed higher seniority. We're of the same peers, and you're calling me a junior nephew? They felt extremely frustrated upon hearing the statement. However, even if they were frustrated, they couldn't do anything. After all, they were aware that the supreme schoolmaster was considered someone equal to their sect masters. There was nothing wrong with referring to himself like that. Shameless, too shameless. They never expected the supreme schoolmaster that had remained silent to put them in such an awkward position the moment he spoke. However, they never thought about what made him do so. If it weren't for them trying to embarrass the true martial school, things wouldn't turn out like this. They couldn't accept that embarrassing the true martial school had taken a turn for them, and they ended up being shamed instead. Everything is because of this man. They looked at the godlike silhouette upon the sky, as if they wanted to engrave this silhouette deep within their soul. As for those that thought further ahead, they knew that he would be an extremely famous person if descriptions of this battle were to be spread around. His future potential would be limitless. After all, he already possessed a transcendent tool the moment he ascended the transcendent realm. This was a miracle by itself. No one knew how he managed to get his hands on it. If he was still a half-step transcendent realm expert, they could think of ways to capture him and interrogate him about the secrets contained within. However, he was currently a transcendent realm expert and had the protection of a transcendent tool. He would be hard to kill. Unless if a huge killing tool like the true martial stone sword or the emergence immortal exterminating saber was used, a transcendent realm expert equipped with a transcendent tool would be tough to kill. Another new star was about to rise. The disciples of the true martial school were all scornfully laughing at the overlords unscrupulously. What brought this satisfaction? This was satisfaction. Previously, some people weren't in compliance with Huang Wuji's ascension, and some were even objecting to it. Now, no one was unsatisfied with Huang Wuji's ascension anymore. Yi Shiwen was the one standing out today, and Yi Shiwen was also the one making them feel satisfied. However, from the eyes of others, there was no need to differentiate between Yi Shiwen and Huang Wuji. After all, they were both from the same legacy. The reason why Yi Shiwen stood out was solely to prevent Huang Wuji from being humiliated. As such, there was no need to differentiate between Yi Shiwen and Huang Wuji. In fact, some people even assumed that their new schoolmaster, Huang Wuji, was the one that had arranged these, and were merely waiting to humiliate the extraterrestrial overlords. Huang Wuji was pleased. He understood that a huge part of the reason Yi Shiwen didn't kill Wei Mingyang and others was because of him. If they were killed, it might incite the anger of those few extraterrestrial overlords, and result in them attacking the true martial school. Currently, the true martial school was merely putting on a fake front. While it might be good in scaring others off, they wouldn't be able to withstand another invasion, especially after the emergent school's attack. Letting matters settle down like this made the true martial school's disciples vent out their frustration and shut the mouths of the extraterrestrial overlords. After all, those people weren't dead. After Yi Shiwen tossed the four of them down, he became uninterested. While a huge reason he let them go was to prevent Huang Wuji from experiencing the dilemma, part of it was also because of the fake front the true martial school had put on. A little part of it was also because he didn't care about it. After this battle, he was sure that he would be an unforgettable trauma engraved deep within their mind. After all, he defeated the four of them in an instant. Unless they managed to defeat him, a weakness would always be engraved in their mind. If the trauma gets too severe, not to mention improving, even maintaining their current cultivation without declining would be considered decent. This was the so-called psychological barrier. If they were unable to defeat Yi Shiwen after a long time, such barriers would turn into a demon of the heart, constantly haunting them. When the time comes, the so-called distinguished characters with a limitless future would turn into a huge joke. Would Yi Shiwen give them the chance to defeat him? Of course not. Although Yi Ziwen's actions seemed to be rash, everything was executed with very thorough plottings. One bolt of earth lightning after another bombarded his body, and the weight of a mountain was bombarding his body. This power didn't make him move at all. On the contrary, he absorbed it to reinforce his internal organs. To him, this 5 elements heaven's retribution was an excellent opportunity to strengthen his internal organs. Within the 5 elements heaven's retribution, the lightning element was used to reinforce his body, and the power of the 5 elements were used to strengthen his internal organs. Although the anatomy of the Star Beast avatar and a human was different, some parts remained similar. The heart, liver, spleen, lung, and kidney corresponded to the 5 elements, and metal corresponded to the lungs. When Yi Shiwen used the 5 elements to reinforce his internal organs, he noticed the strength of his organs reaching an extreme state. If someone's physical body were a boat, the internal organs would undoubtedly be the boat's power system. Through the reinforcement of the 5 elements' power, his internal organs experienced a huge leap in strength. It allowed this human body to advance even further. Although the battle between Yi Shiwen, Wei Mingyang, and the others had already ended, everyone was still staring at Yi Shiwen, who was still undergoing heaven's retribution. No one noticed that the ceremony had stopped halfway. Huang Wuji didn't mind at all. Initially, a huge part of the reason for conducting this ascension ceremony so extravagantly was to show off the strength of the true martial school, especially in such a situation where war awaited them. Although some accidents happened, the goal was achieved. The effects became even more outstanding because of Yi Shiwen. He asked someone to stop the ceremony. After all, no one seemed to mind. Beyond the skies, Yi Ziwen's heaven's retribution had reached its final wave, the Wood Divine Lightning. With the previous experience of receiving those retribution lightnings, Yi Shiwen was already extremely familiar with it. He refined the Wood Divine Lightning into his own body. The retribution lightning lasted for 2 entire hours. After it really couldn't do anything to Yi Shiwen anymore, it finally left reluctantly. A smile flashed across Yi Ziwen's face. Powers were surging within his body. There was even the power of 5 elements circulating within his body and were flowing within the Star Beast avatar's body in a profound and regulated manner. The 5 elements' power was a whole new type of power and was something his original body wasn't able to form. Like the name of the tyrant body scripture, it was too tyrannical and oppressive, unable to contain other powers. Being pure and domineering was the specialty of the tyrant body scripture. Other forms of energy would only be converted into the energy of the tyrant body scripture. As such, the power of the 5 elements, as well as other powers, wouldn't be able to coexist with the tyrant body scripture peacefully. Refining the power of 5 elements within his body was the most significant reward he received from undergoing this retribution. Within every single move, the power of the 5 elements was surging. Although Yi Shiwen still couldn't control the power of the 5 elements as he wanted to, there was time for him to do so in the future. When he would be able to use the 5 elements' power as he wished, it was imaginable how much of an increase it would be to his combat prowess. Even if he had just entered the Transcendent Realm, his combat prowess was already comparable to the top Transcendent Realm experts with the Star Beast avatar's innate talents and the power of the 5 elements. In addition, the other huge reward he received was the improvements of the lightning wings. It increased his shifting speed to its max within a short amount of time. Even if he were to face the original Supreme School leader or the top-notch Transcendent Realm experts like the Emergent School leader, he would be able to contend against them effortlessly. Besides, he had merely just entered the Transcendent Realm. After he reached the peak of the first-level Transcendent Realm, things would be entirely different. He could feel numerous spiritual senses sweeping around his body. However, he didn't mind it. For others, the 5 elements' lightning retribution might be something extremely horrifying. However, for him, the retribution his original body faced was much higher than that of the Star Beast avatar. It even made him feel that it was inferior. After his original body had passed the extremely weird retribution, he was much more relaxed when looking at the 5 elements' lightning retribution. He didn't feel that it was horrifying anymore. Heaven's retribution was overcome. A brand new Transcendent Realm expert had managed to pass the retribution in front of the eye of many others. In fact, he even managed to defeat the 4 Transcendent Realm experts besieging him. News of the matters that happened within the true martial school's ascension ceremony spread out in a horrifying speed. Within a single night, it shook the entire world. Chapter 795. Shock the world. The true martial domain was experiencing the calm before the storm, and everyone within was fearful of what was about to come. Any news would be spread about very quickly, not to mention the news of the 4 top-notch distinguished prodigies of the extraterrestrial overlords being beaten to a half-death state. This shook the entire true martial domain. Any actions of a transcendent realm expert would possibly become eye-catching news within the true martial domain, not to mention 4 transcendent realm experts being beaten without the ability to retaliate. The combat power Yi Shiwen possessed was already comparable to an experienced transcendent realm expert. Due to Yi Ziwen's exceptional performance, those that wanted to figure out the weakness of the true martial school canceled their intentions. Yi Ziwen's domineering strength attracted everyone's gaze. The way he shone made it hard for the actual strength of the true martial domain to be seen through. It wasn't right to say that the true martial school's foundations had all been consumed, as it didn't look like it either. After all, Huang Wuji had ascended the transcendent realm and became the new schoolmaster. Yi Shiwen had also passed the transcendent realm retribution in front of everyone and managed to defeat the 4 top-notch distinguished prodigies among the extraterrestrial overlord sections. Their talented younger generation was emerging. It didn't seem like they lacked the strength to nurture more talents. The local forces of the true martial domain were all also supporting the true martial school with the intent of letting the true martial school become the representative force of the true martial domain. For the first time, everyone knew of the transcendent realm expert, Yi Shiwen. This was extremely different from when he was a great sage. When he was in the great sage realm, it didn't matter if he was strong or not. After all, in the eyes of a transcendent realm expert, he would only look like a stronger ant. Now, he was in an equal position with those transcendent realm experts. No one could truly oppress him when he had entered the ranks of the top-notch experts beneath the starry skies. The true martial school made another huge news. Although they didn't voluntarily display it, it made the true martial school shrouded in a mist of mystery. The entire true martial school remained silent towards the discussion of the outer world and declined the local forces' request to convince them to be the representatives of the true martial domain. Outsiders might not be able to tell the real strength of the true martial school, but they were well aware of it. While they weren't fragile, they couldn't possibly withstand another turmoil. Everyone was also clear of the extraterrestrial overlords' intentions. They had their plans. If the true martial domain were divided, it would be fine. In their eyes, the local forces in the true martial domain, especially the true martial school, didn't pose any threats. After all, the true martial stone sword couldn't be brought outside of the true martial school. Without the true martial stone sword, the true martial school wasn't worth mentioning. It wouldn't meddle with their plot. However, if the true martial school united the local forces within the true martial domain, it would instantly pose a massive threat upon them. When the time comes, other overlords would all ally with each other and attack the true martial domain's local forces, with the first being the true martial school. The true martial school was aware. As such, even under such a situation, no one suggested doing so. Just as the outer world was experiencing the calm before the storm, everyone within the true martial school's Tibetan Star Summit Hall was stunned. They were shocked by what Yi Shiwen had just said. "Master, I am incapable, and have no intentions of inheriting the Tibetan Star Summit's chief position." The Tibetan Star Summit's conference hall was huge. Even when more than 100 people were gathered here, it wasn't particularly congested. Currently, everyone was staring at the green-color silhouette standing in the middle of the hall with a stunned expression. Did he refuse? This was something that no one in the Tibetan Star Summit had expected. After Huang Wuji became the supreme schoolmaster, Yi Shiwen had ascended to the transcendent realm in front of everyone and destroyed the plots of the extraterrestrial overlords trying to weigh how strong the true martial school currently was. He had raised their school's reputation significantly. In everyone's eyes, he would naturally be the next Tibetan Star Sun. And yet he refused. What is happening? In the huge hall, only Bai Jiansong, Yi Feng, and Yi Ruxue could guess his reason for doing so. Bai Jiansong vaguely remembered what Yi Shiwen said. He had no interest in the chief's position, as he wasn't aiming to inherit the position. Yi Feng and Yi Ruxue understood their little brother. He was already like this from the start. He wasn't interested in gaining power and authority. It was hard for one's personality to change. Even after hundreds of years had passed, there were no changes. The expression of the Tibetan star sun changed slightly. He never expected Yi Shiwen to reject him. He smiled bitterly in his heart. Although the Tibetan Star Summit had produced 2 transcendent realm disciples, none of these were going to inherit the chief's position. One became the schoolmaster, while the other one preferred to be free. His intentions weren't set on the chief position. That must mean that his previous method of handling them was problematic. To search back the Tibetan star scripture, he dealt with the disciples just like his ancestors. He let them do whatever they wanted to and didn't care about them at all. It slowly made these disciples used to being lazy. Even Huang Wuji, who was the supreme schoolmaster, wasn't particularly interested in authority either. Needless to say, the fanatical cultivator second disciple Lu Yanlan and the lazy third disciple, Bai Jiansong, were the same. Although Yang Wenjun and Deng Shuixin were considered decent, they were considerably mundane compared to the few exceptional disciples. If they wanted to return the Tibetan Star Summit to its former glory, an influential chief would be necessary. Yi Shiwen looked at the Tibetan Star Sun with a resolute expression. He knew that he would become the Tibetan Star Summit's chief as long as he nodded. He would be in an equal position with the various powerhouse figures within the true martial school. However, this wasn't what he desired. He had no particular interest in it at all. The vast ancient Barrens continent was his real goal. His future martial path and the mystery of his own identity were all within the ancient Barrens continent. In truth, if it weren't for the true martial school facing such a dangerous situation and were in a peaceful state, he would have left it long ago. He would directly go towards the demon domain and advance towards the ancient Barrens continent through the passageway within the demon domain. After a long while, the Tibetan Star Sun let out a sigh and said, "Forget it. Since you're not willing to do so, I won't force you." "Thank you, Master. However, I feel that senior brother Bai would be the most suitable person to inherit the chief position," said Yi Shiwen as he cupped his hands. He wasn't spouting nonsense. In the past, Bai Jiansong had handled the Tibetan Star Summit exceptionally well. The Tibetan Star Summit still needed to be managed despite having so little people residing within. In truth, although there weren't many actual disciples within the Tibetan Star Summit, they possessed many different industrial means of productions. After all, they were once among the top 10 legacies. Even if they had declined, the industries left behind by their ancestors were still an abundance. In the Tibetan Star City alone, it was already a huge mess. Many disciples were relying on their survival at the Tibetan Star Summit. Although they weren't the disciples of the Tibetan Star Summit, those still needed to be taken care of. Bai Jiansong had the ability to gain the favor of the public. At the same time, he also had the capabilities to take care of the Tibetan Star Summit. Bai Jiansong glared at Yi Shiwen. Compared to Yi Shiwen, who had no interest in becoming the Tibetan Star Sun, he was merely lazy. In the past, he took care of the matters regarding the Tibetan Star Summit out of helplessness. After all, someone had to take care of it. They couldn't just be left there to rot. As such, he was forced to do so. He could only smile bitterly at Yi Shiwen, recommending him to be the next Tibetan Star Sun. The Tibetan Star Sun was a little furious after seeing Bai Jiansong's expression. What kind of disciple did I educate? One is weirder than the other. One is more peculiar than the other. Initially, Huang Wuji was undoubtedly going to be the next in line Tibetan Star Sun. However, he ended up becoming the schoolmaster, which made a mess to his plan. The new disciples looked at the few older disciples with a weird expression. In other legacies, the alluring chief position that others would fight for was like trash in the Tibetan Star Summit. Everyone was throwing their opportunities away. This made them realize that the Tibetan Star Summit was entirely different from other legacies. It was much different from the previous legacy they were in, filled with plottings and schemes. Of course, many disciples had the ambition of becoming the schoolmaster. A fire suddenly burned within their hearts. If Yi Shiwen, Bai Jiansong, and the others were snatching the chief's position, they would naturally have nothing to do with it. Based on strength and experience alone, they weren't a match for those few old disciples. The old disciples were extremely experienced people that had been here since its salvation. However, Since Bai Jiansong and the others weren't interested, and Huang Wuji was now the schoolmaster, they might have a chance. Yi Shiwen noticed these. However, he didn't address the matter. If the Tibetan Star Summit truly wanted to return to its prime, it would require some ambitious people. If they were like Bai Jiansong, Lu Yanlan, Yang Wenjun, and Deng Shuixin, while their relationship with each other might be very close, it would take a long time before the Tibetan Star Summit would gain back its prime. If that's the case, the matter of the chief position shall be discussed later, said the Tibetan Star Sun. He wasn't in a rush. After all, he was still a vigorous youth. He had enough time to await the birth of the next transcendent realm expert from the Tibetan Star Summit. No matter if it was Lu Yanlan or Bai Jiansong, they had a considerable possibility of ascending the transcendent realm. It was only a matter of time. Master, I have something I want to talk about, said Yi Shiwen. What is it? Said the Tibetan Star Sun with a happy expression. Even if Yi Shiwen wasn't willing to inherit the position of the Tibetan Star Sun, Yi Shiwen was still his disciple. He was thrilled at Yi Shiwen having an outstanding performance. This time, he even made the true martial school and the Tibetan Star Summit much more glorious. I want to go out on an adventure. These few days, I felt that my cultivation's improvement was prolonged. I hope to go out for a while and seek a way to break through, said Yi Shiwen. Usually, he would go out whenever he wanted to. He just had to say so. However, after the true martial school had secluded themselves from the world, it became troublesome to go out. Only with the permission of the summit's chief would they be granted permission to go out. The Tibetan Star Sun pondered for a moment and said, Indeed, although your cultivation had increased quickly, your foundations aren't stable. It feels a little hollow. It's fine if you go on an adventure outside and gain more experience. Only by stabilizing your cultivation realm would you be able to improve further in the future. Thank you, Master. Chapter 796. Stranger Li Feng on a deserted road, the blazing sun hung high up upon the sky. It was noon, and hot waves were sweeping about and distorted the entire ancient road. Looking at it from afar, it couldn't even be seen clearly, as if many things were being warped. A green silhouette was walking upon the huge road casually. Beside him was a black-color living being that resembled a mountain dog. Yi Shiwen looked ahead and saw many white bones by the roadside. Unlike the south region that was slowly recovering its peace and prosperity, the central region was still caught within the flames of war among a few vast forces. The conflicts and war between the extraterrestrial overlords and the local forces of the true martial domain had yet to come to a stop. After the Xianyuan Temple was annihilated, the meteor sect that took over them did not include that area within their territory. The meteor sect wanted to attend to other matters and didn't have the effort to waste it on taking it over. Similarly, these extraterrestrial overlords didn't intend to remain within the true martial domain for a long time. As such, they didn't care about the lives of average citizens. If more were dead, the true martial domain's potential and strength would decrease tremendously. After all, the distance between the true martial domain and their main base was too far apart. If the number of people who remained was too little, they might be devoured by the true martial domain forces. If the number of people who came here was too much, some problems might arise at their main camp. The situation where the extraterrestrial overlords gather within the true martial domain was destined to be temporary. Sooner or later, they would have to retreat. However, no one knew when they would retreat. When the time comes, no one knew what kind of mess the true martial domain would be in. Currently, other than the few territories governed over by some local forces, the different parts of the central region were in constant warfare. The situation was an extreme mess. Thieves and robbers were running rampant. No citizens within the domain were safe. The situation had become better during the past few years. After all, the meteor sect had exerted a little of their energy into suppressing the havoc. With that, the central region finally managed to recover a little. However, compared to their former prosperous state, everything now seemed empty and creepy. In fact, in some villages or cities that Yi Shiwen passed through, some were empty. Because of the havoc, the central region's population had decreased by more than half. The number of deaths even soared to tens of billions. Yi Shiwen had been adventuring for 3 years. 3 years had passed. Previously, after Yi Shiwen caused the ruckus within the true martial domain, he didn't make any more shocking movements after he left the mountain to venture about. After 3 years had passed, the ruckus he caused had slowly died down, and all the tales about him slowly vanished. When will these extraterrestrial overlords leave the true martial domain? Said Yi Shiwen with a sigh. Although the central region hadn't been under the control of the true martial domain for a long time, it was still a part of the true martial domain. It's still too early. If they didn't find the thing they desire, they wouldn't leave. The wolf cub beside him said nonchalantly. To him, these didn't matter at all. On the way, they noticed a tea shop nearby. Yi Shiwen and the wolf cub strode towards the tea shop. 2 cups of tea. When Yi Shiwen had just entered, the wolf cub immediately said aloud. It shocked the shop's waiter. He said in a stuttering manner, This, what? Have you not seen such a handsome wolf before? Said the wolf cub in a dissatisfied manner. The shop's waiter felt wronged. It wasn't that he had never seen a wolf as ugly as a mountain dog before. Instead, he had never seen one that could speak and even wanted to drink tea. However, he wasn't too surprised. During the past years of warfare, despite making the central region a war zone, it allowed numerous regular citizens to witness various supernatural human beings that they would never see in their lifetime. Many kinds of experts that flew in the sky and walked on land would always appear here. Although this wolf that could speak was weird, it wasn't something that he couldn't accept. Waiter, do what he says. 2 cups of herbal tea, please, said Yi Shiwen with a smile. The 2 of them found a table and sat by it. The wolf cub acted just like a human and placed his hips on the chair. Then, he stood up and put his front paws by the table. The scene was bizarre. The surrounding customers were all staring at the wolf cub. However, it didn't care about their gazes at all and still acted very casually. He didn't feel that anything was inappropriate. Yi Shiwen didn't care about them as well. He had never treated the wolf cub as his pet and had always let him do whatever he wanted to. The 2 cups of herbal tea quickly arrived. The wolf cub opened his mouth widely, and the herbal tea within his cup shot up like a water pillar, which then entered his mouth. It made the surrounding regular customers surprised. To them, this was already considered magical. The wolf cub seemed to be enjoying the surprised gaze of the surrounding crowd. With a prideful expression, he ordered a few more cups of herbal tea and continuously performed such action happily. Yi Shiwen found it hilarious. The wolf cub was just like a little kid. It enjoyed standing out, and it enjoyed being admired by many people. Only, its performance was too obvious. Everyone could tell from its prideful expression. Yi Shiwen slowly drank his herbal tea. Naturally, there wouldn't be any good tea in the tea shops by the roadside, not to mention spiritual beverages. Only his cultivation, as well as the wolf cub's cultivation, were extremely high. They didn't mind quenching their thirst with herbal tea. Just as the wolf cub had enough fun, Yi Shiwen wanted to stand up to leave. Suddenly, a loud sound resounded from outside. Boss, give me a cup of herbal tea. The loud voice seemed to have pierced through Yi Shiwen's soul. It made his heart shudder. As he turned his head, he saw a middle-aged-looking man. The man was wearing clothing with a weird style that Yi Shiwen couldn't make out. His face was white, and he had no facial hair. His chin was as sharp as a knife, and he was extremely handsome. Noticing Yi Shiwen's gaze, the handsome middle-aged man nodded and smiled at him. Then, he sat down at the table beside Yi Shiwen and the wolf cub. Very quickly, the waiter brought his herbal tea over. He tasted it thoroughly as if he was drinking some sort of peerlessly divine tea. Then, he looked at the wolf cub in amusement. Finally, the wolf cub with skin as thick as a city wall felt unnatural. It roared at the middle-aged man furiously, "What are you looking at? Haven't you seen such a handsome wolf before?" The old man didn't seem to have heard the screams of the wolf cub. He was still enjoying his tea in amusement. After a long while, he finally spoke before the wolf cub roared again, "I've seen wolves before, but a wolf demon beast? It's the first time I've seen one. Yi Shiwen and the wolf cub were surprised. While the two knew of the wolf cub's identity, many others wouldn't know of it. Even within the true martial school, everyone treated the wolf cub as a typical beast. A beast and a demon beast were two entirely different matters. A beast might have the chance to evolve into a demon beast, but a demon beast couldn't be categorized with beasts. One of the most apparent differences between them was that while many beasts possessed their intelligence comparable to human intelligence, it was mostly due to their increase in strength and the refinement of the bone behind their brains. Their offspring would still be ignorant unless they managed to achieve the cultivation of their parents, which would allow them to gain their intelligence. If it were a demon beast, it would be entirely different. Their child wouldn't have a bone behind their brain since birth, and harbors intelligence naturally, just like a human infant. Although their appearance was still that of a beast or other forms, they still had their intelligence. The only difference between them and infants would merely be their appearance. The difference between a beast and a demon beast was huge. After all, it was considered evolution. However, not many people were aware of it. In fact, if Yi Shiwen didn't live with the knowledgeable old monsters like the wolf cub and Yimo for such a long time, he wouldn't even know the difference between them. And yet, this middle-aged man knew about it. It would be nothing if he knew about it. Most importantly, he could even tell the difference. As a matter of fact, there were practically no differences between a beast and a demon beast. Since he could see through it, his percipience, his strength, Yi Shiwen suddenly realized that he couldn't see through the middle-aged man's cultivation. No matter how he looked, the middle-aged man seemed like a harmless human who didn't possess any cultivation. However, Yi Shiwen knew that it was all an illusion. If he merely had such strength, he wouldn't be able to see through the wolf cub's identity. The wolf cub was glaring at the middle-aged man intently. He roared, "Who are you?" "Relax, I bear no ill will." The middle-aged man smiled. Yi Shiwen felt that the smile was a little familiar, but couldn't remember why. "May I know this senior's name?" asked Yi Shiwen. The middle-aged man smiled and said, "My surname is Li, and my name is Feng. Li Feng." Yi Shiwen chanted his name silently and realized that it wasn't the name of any top-notch experts he was familiar with. After thinking for a while, he gave up. There were numerous experts within the world. He wasn't even sure how many experts were cultivating secretly. It wasn't weird for one or two experts that he had never heard of to emerge. In fact, this was considered quite normal. Even the well-known Yi Shiwen would experience fear? As if he sensed Yi Ziwen's wariness, the middle-aged man, Li Feng, suddenly laughed loudly. Yi Ziwen's expression was filled with surprise. If he could tell the origins of the wolf cub, he might be extremely knowledgeable. However, there weren't many that could recognize him in only one glance. Currently, his enemies were spread throughout the world, especially the extraterrestrial overlord experts. They would do anything to kill him. As such, he had been hiding his identity when he was adventuring. Although he possessed the Star Beast avatar was in Transcendent Realm cultivation, he didn't dare to be too arrogant. He wouldn't be confident against other experienced and influential Transcendent Realm experts. Other than that, if his opponent came in a group, Yi Shiwen could only attempt to flee. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.